Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm and you are watching second part of What If Naruto Had a Sexy Vampire Bodyguard. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
There was a great deal of tension as Naruto bit his lip out of frustration and a hint of hopelessness. He peered out uncertainly at the situation he had put himself in as well as the field. Oh, why was Sama tormenting him right now over his error? Staring at the blonde who was practically sweating from stress, Shiroi said languidly, "You know Naruto. Kun, if you don't move I'll be an old lady by the time you're done." Naruto exclaimed in frustration, still considering his next move, dang it. Jiraiya looked down at the chess game the blonde and his lover were playing and exaggeratedly exclaimed, "Oh, for the love of Kami. Sama, just make a move, Gaki." A whole year had passed since Naruto's maiden mission and the night he and Shiroi genuinely fell in love. Jiraiya had instantly entered pervert mode after that evening and inquired about the night's specifics. Shiroi was grinning like a devil, and Naruto had just blushed and his eyes had gone glassy. Their neighbors began complaining about the noises made that evening early the following morning. Although Jiraiya wasn't sure exactly what had happened, she assumed that they had gone all the way since almost the whole neighborhood had been complaining about noises for most of the night. For a whole day, Jiraiya couldn't stop grinning at Naruto, which greatly irritated Naruto, but he handled it. Ever since, Shiroi has made it a point to only fall asleep when her favorite blonde is sharing a bed with her. Thus, aside from when the blonde was dispatched on a mission, Naruto and Shiroi have always shared a bed. If the two weren't already essentially stuck together, they certainly were now. They also had no trouble showing off their affections in public, holding hands, cuddling, and occasionally groping, all the while maintaining naive expressions. Jiraiya was still perplexed as to how they were able to look so innocent when they touched. Next, Jiraiya noticed the markings on Shiroi's and Naruto's necks. Shiroi called and, in response to his question, gave a brief explanation of the mark. The first of the mark's features was evident. It made it clear to everyone that Shiroi and Naruto were taken and would always belong to each other. The second was that it slightly increased their respective strengths, which Jiraiya verified by showing that Naruto Jutsu and his strength were stronger overall by a narrow margin. Even Shiroi, whose strength was already unimaginable, grew stronger. That gave the old wise man a slight scare. Really, she is practically as strong as Tsunade due to her natural strength. She was now genuinely as strong as Tsunade. The silvery white-haired vampire didn't train with them, which made Jiraiya a little relieved. He was convinced that she would be an absolute powerhouse if she did. In a way, the mark connected them as the last and final thing. They would be able to detect one another's thoughts and emotions. It was more like they could get a sense of what they were thinking than mind reading. Additionally, the mark sort of connects their lives. The other would know right away if one passed away or was in danger of dying. And if one of them passes away, the other will too. It kind of dumbed down the meaning of "till death do us," and put it in a garbage can. Considering that they would pass away together and spend eternity together in heaven. Eventually, the mark allowed itself to live as long as its partner did. In other words, if one of them was immortal, the mark would cause the other to live to the same age as their partner. Jiraiya snorted a little at that. He was aware that vampires could live up to 200 years or more. In addition, the Uzumaki clan was known for having extraordinarily long lifespans, at least 400 to 500 years. The Uzumaki live longer when they are in better health. It is claimed that the oldest known Uzumaki lived for 700 years before passing away. In addition to ensuring that Naruto would live a very long time because the Kyuubi were always taking care of the blonde's physical needs, the blonde had accomplished something that Orochimaru had always wished for. Eternally, with combat being the only means of death. Jiraiya informed Shiroi and Naruto of this. Naturally, the two were astonished beyond comprehension. Given that he would outlive all of his friends, Naruto was discouraged. Identifying the blonde's distress, Shiroi reassured him, promising to always be by his side. Thanking Shiroi for his words, Naruto became happier upon learning that Shiroi would live to be just as old as he was. Even though his godson was essentially immortal, Jiraiya was still pleased for the blonde. But then he became serious, saying that this should be kept a closely guarded secret because someone like Orochimaru would do anything to get hold of the blonde. Naruto and Shiroi both nodded grimly and forgot about the conversation. Not to mention the blonde's training, of course. Finally, 3 months later, the blonde succeeded. He finished the Rasengan, and Jiraiya was pleased with the blonde's accomplishments. 2 versions of the finished Rasengan existed. The wind style, or Rasengan, was the first. The method resembles a regular Rasengan in appearance, but it has 4 tiny white protrusions that encircle it, giving the impression that it is a miniature version of the concept of a finished wind style. Rasengan is the combination of the power and rotation of a Rasengan with Naruto's wind. Natured chakra condensed into a stable sphere. Jiraiya classified it as a kinjutsu right away. The explanation was straightforward. In addition to attacking at the molecular level, it also slowly harmed your hand and eventually rendered your chakra usage useless. Unless Naruto managed to throw the jutsu, Jiraiya and Shiroi banned him from using it. Naruto was a little discouraged by this. After all, he had invented the original technique, and he was now unable to employ it. But when the notion of tossing it was presented, after giving it some thought, the blonde made the decision to test the theory. He proudly displayed his most recent Rasengan version 2 months later. The Rasen Shuriken is his most recent and potent jutsu. A larger variant of the wind style, known as the Rasengan, was the Rasen Shuriken. The Rasen Shuriken was nearly identical to the wind style Rasengan, with the exception that it was larger and somewhat stronger and that it could be thrown. It also had larger white blades that spun erratically, giving the appearance of a massive shuriken. Thus the Rasen Shuriken moniker. The ability of the blades themselves to expand was another feature. The blonde tested out his new jutsu and was happy with the outcome. He showed Jiraiya and Shiroi the results right away, and they responded as he had anticipated. Jiraiya initially had an expression of complete shock, but then a warm smile of pride appeared on his face as he gave Naruto a pat on the back and complimented him on his wonderful work. But Shiroi appeared equally amazed and overjoyed for the blonde. Her long, intense kiss with Naruto lasted for a few minutes. The sound of a perverted giggling caused them to quickly part ways, and when they turned around, they saw Jiraiya scribbling in that damn notebook. Naruto and Shiroi exchanged a single glance before starting to beat the pervert to a bloody pulp and set fire to that priceless notebook right in front of him. The twisted recluse let out a dejected cry upon realizing that his notes were gone. Unbeknownst to Shiroi and Naruto, though, the notebook they set on fire was actually a phony that Jiraiya had substituted at the last minute. Not long after he finished his Rasen Shuriken. The blonde accepted more missions, but they weren't nearly as fascinating as he had hoped. There were 2 types of missions, high level C. Rank and B. Ranked. They mostly involved taking care of low level missing nin and eliminating some bandits. In other words, after 6 months, Naruto grew tired of those missions. Since he still had missions to complete, he really had no grounds for complaint. Sitting around and waiting for something to happen would drive him insane. In order to spend more time with Shiroi, he simply swiftly and covertly finished his missions. That was his way. Awaken, train, complete a few missions, and then devote the majority of his time to Shiroi. Occasionally, he would converse with the Kyuubi by going into his mental realm. The Kyuubi was naturally a little antagonistic toward him. However, the Kyuubi gradually warmed up to him, even if only a little. Although Kyuubi has consistently denied it, Naruto believed that he and the Kyuubi became fairly close friends. Despite this, the enormous demonic fox couldn't help but be relieved that he was correct in his assessment. He was considered a friend by the Kyuubi, as well as the son he never had. He would never admit it, though. Damn it, he was the king of the Biju. He had a standing to maintain. He would be made fun of if his siblings learned about his relationship with the blonde. Okay, so the fox would make the Hachibi and Nibi happy. However, the others, he would never be able to get over it. Thus, the enormous, overgrown fox always ensured that the blonde would never bring up their connection to the other Jinchuriki. Though a little perplexed, the blonde reluctantly accepted the Kyuubi's demands. The Kyuubi offered to upgrade his hidden blade as a token of appreciation. The blonde, perplexed, inquired as to how the hidden blade might be improved even more. The Kyuubi clarified that by making different adjustments, the hidden blade could be upgraded. For instance, the Kyuubi improved the blade so that, in the event that he flicked his hands to the left, a metal hook would extend from the bracer. When the blonde gave it a try, he was shocked to see a hook-shaped blade extend. The blonde's imagination was blown away by all the things he could accomplish with the hook blade. When he was on a mission dealing with some bandits, he even tested out one of his ideas. He had to admit, it was awesome to spin around, grab a bandit with his hook blade, and then hurl them across the field. Kyuubi found that to be very funny. And when that happened, Altair just pulsed in confusion, wondering why Kyuubi was howling with laughter. The blonde had been training in Kenjutsu quite well. Jiraiya calculated that he was at least a mid-level Kage. Though he only knew his own versions of the Rasengan and the limited jutsu he received from Uzushiogakure, his ninjutsu was truly amazing. His taijutsu was low-level Kage. Due to his ability to wield jutsu power, the blonde was a high-level Kage. Along the way, the had also started experimenting with different weapons. Although he had mixed feelings about some weapons, he never saw the point in learning how to use them because they were so helpful in combat. The rope dart was a weapon he had started using and found enjoyable. Rope darts were made out of long ropes that were between 3 and 5 meters long, with metal darts fastened to one end. The other end of the rope was either held in one's free hand or secured to an object when throwing a dart. The rope darts could be used in a variety of ways. For example, if an enemy was too far away, he could use them to physically drag them to him. Alternatively, he could pull them off trees to deny them the upper hand. Nonetheless, hanging an opponent from a tree or from any other position was Naruto's preferred method of employing the rope dart. Kyuubi seemed to really enjoy that approach, judging from the cheerful, energetic megawatt smile on his face. The crossbow was the blonde's favorite and last weapon. He killed a bandit at random and took him off. When he saw the weapon, he performed a test shot. He kept it right away after being happy with the outcome and only used it when a target was too far away for him to hit with his throwing knives. He placed all of the crossbow's ammo inside a seal on the weapon, and a seal for auto reload on it. By channeling chakra into the seals, he was essentially able to shoot a crossbow. And there you have it. In a battle, he wouldn't need to use his hands because an arrow would emerge from the storage seal and the crossbow would be automatically reloaded by the auto reload seal. The blonde was becoming known as well. People were unaware of his true identity beneath his mask, but his gray robes, the fox emblems on his bracers, and his sword Altair were the main features that set him apart. Observing no other sword with an eagle's head serving as a pommel and eagle's wings serving as a guard. The Fox Assassin was the nickname that everyone had coined for the blonde. Because of the whiskers on his cheeks and the grin he would give his clients, which resembled a fox. The Kyuubi was pleased with the nickname. The moniker fit his wielder, and Altair pulsed in agreement. The blonde had come across some would-be swordsmen on a few of his missions, mostly inexperienced samurai. They declared right away that an unscrupulous shinobi shouldn't be wielding a sword like Altair when they saw Naruto wielding it, and attempted to seize the blade by force. That infuriated Naruto. He did not hand Altair over to a group of mediocre swordsmen. He didn't think they were deserving of seeing Altair's sliver blade, so he gave their asses to them right away without even drawing Altair. Altair pulsated in agreement, not wanting its blade to be stained red by the blood of a stupid swordsman. Following a full year of missions, instruction, and weapon testing, it seemed Jiraiya's turn to impart his strategy to his young apprentice. He thus imparted the blonde strategy and how it could save the lives of you and your allies for a few weeks. The perverted hermit was aware that Naruto was the type of person who was always coming up with new strategies and plans. However, eventually it would not hold up. That's why our blonde antagonist is currently pitting his lover against him in a game of chess. Naruto yelled in exasperation, "Hey, fuck you, Ero Sensei. Playing this game against Shiroi-chan is fucking difficult. Datbayo." Smirking at his pupil, Jiraiya said, "Or maybe you're just an idiot." After a brief moment of rage, Naruto heard Shiroi clear her throat and turned back to the board game. With a warning look, Shiroi told Jiraiya to keep her cool and not to agitate her unofficial husband and blonde lover. Jiraiya just sighed and shrugged indifferently. When his godson moved his knight so that, should Shiroi move her own knight, he would be able to capture her king, he returned his focus to the chess game. Shiroi struck immediately after Naruto made his move. Naruto cried out, staring at the board game, "Damn it. Kami. Sama Wahi. It was unthinkable. How on earth could this have happened? With Shiroi's pawn squarely in his knight's path, his only options were to move his king and a pawn. That didn't matter, though, because Shiroi would eventually capture the king regardless of which way he moved his monarch. To put it briefly, he made out with everyone. What on earth could he do? In any case, he was defeated. Never before had he felt so totally defeated. Hold on. Perhaps he could. Huh. Beat that Shiroi. Chan. Naruto exclaimed, a smile spreading across his face. The cause? Just now he had set up his pawn to take one of her knights. But when Shiroi only moved her other knight to capture his king, his expression changed to one of complete despair. Checkmate Naruto. Kun, Shiroi exclaimed, a triumphant smile spreading across her face. No. Cried Naruto. Naruto whispered, I just died a little bit inside. Wasn't Shiroi's expression deadpan? Was he not taking this personally? Too much? Jiraiya just gave a slight frown. Oh come on Gaki. It can't have been that hard. He replied. All the blonde could do was glare at Sannin the Toad. How about you try playing her in chess? Datbeo. Damn that verbal tick. Naruto yelled. With a small smile, Jiraiya said, alright, Gaki, move aside. I'll show you how this game is really played. With a pout. With a simple huff, Naruto got up from his seat, allowing his perverted teacher to take his place while he rearranged every piece. The mental struggle between Shiroi and Jiraiya started after that. After 4 minutes, a vanquished Jiraiya gazed at the game with unwavering disbelief. The author of Icha Icha looked on as Shiroi's bishop captured his king and cried out, no. How is this possible? He shook his head in denial and yelled, no. I refuse to believe this. Shiroi said, I win arrow. GG. Deal with it. Jiraiya only received a sympathetic glance from Naruto since, in the chess match, Shiroi had essentially given them their asses for free. For a few moments, Jiraiya wept in anguish, and Shiroi gave a tiny drop of perspiration. Really, didn't they take this situation seriously enough? Jiraiya cried out in desperation for a short while before straightening up and grinning. Jiraiya started, as you two know, it's been 2 years since our journey. As the perverted sage spoke, Shiroi and Naruto both turned to stare at him in silence. Naruto. You have learned much during our training trip, and I must say I could be more proud of you than I am now. The blonde gave his teacher a thank. You look, puffing out his chest in pride for his instruction and advice. The white-haired hermit turned to face Shiroi. Shiroi. I can't help but feel a sense of pride as I look upon you. Despite the fact that you never really expressed an interest in learning shinobi arts, and instead focused on mastering what you already knew. The hermit said. With a beaming smile, Shiroi settled herself comfortably by Naruto's side. Naruto immediately put his arm around her waist. Before he spoke, Jiraiya grinned at the action. I'm proud of you both, and I'm happy for the both of you. And now we only have 1 more year of this trip together. He said. Both lovers gave Jiraiya a contented smile. Even Kyuubi smiled a little, but it vanished as soon as it appeared. He ruled the Biju as their king. Kings also did not grin. They grinned, and Kyuubi grinned in response. Even though it looked more like a smile. Even though it was a huge, terrifying, demonic smile, it was still a smile. Altair even pulsed with happiness and contentment. However, Jiraiya's next words caused all of their smiles to vanish in an instant. Now if only you two could give me more inspiration, by getting active, tonight. He grumbled. Before glancing at Jiraiya, Shiroi and Naruto exchanged glances. And they reached a silent consensus. They clenched their teeth and strode menacingly, if slowly, in the direction of the perverted hermit. Jiraiya laughed nervously. Too much? He questioned. 2 fists flying toward him at top speed was his only response. Kyuubi just gave their antics a shake of his head. He concluded, humans are so fucking strange. Altair gave a nod of agreement. Shortly after discussing how to complete the remaining portion of their last year together, our favorite blonde and his partner defeated the perverted hermit. Come with me as we travel to Konoha. Numerous villagers were interacting in the streets, which were brimming with activity. Selling their goods, negotiating with others, closing deals, and, of course, chatting up people about the newest and somewhat relevant news. One person, though, stood out from the others. The girl's identity was immediately apparent due to her short, vivid pink hair. Her happy expression was directed towards the village through her vivid green eyes. For those who are unaware, this girl was none other than Haruno Sakura, a former teammate and crush of Naruto. Chunin, who was recently promoted, had just finished her shift at the hospital. She decided to wander aimlessly until she discovered something to occupy her time. Her appearance had barely changed, you would only notice subtle adjustments. However, unless you really looked closely, you wouldn't really notice. I think everyone is aware of her appearance in Shippuden. She sighed after wondering for a few minutes because nothing piqued her interest. But when she heard Yamanaka Ino, her childhood friend, speaking, her ears perked up. With her hands on her hips, Ino greeted her childhood friend Sakura, saying, "Hey Sakura." The girl with the pink hair smiled and said, "Hey Ino, how's it been?" A bit boring, but other than that not much else. Ino laughed. "Yeah, it has been pretty boring around here, hasn't it? It kinda makes me wish back for the old days, back when." Sakura smiled slightly, but she refrained from saying anything more because she was still a little sour about the topic of her team. When Ino noticed Sakura was losing hope, she swiftly brought up another topic. "I heard Hinata is still acting. Strange." The word, strange, was a stretch. She had become irritable for an odd reason a few weeks after Naruto left for his training expedition. And she would just lose it in a fit of wrath whenever she saw something that was silvery white. From then on, everyone was leery of the Hyuga. But a year prior, she had once more lost her temper and destroyed numerous white items. Since then, she had developed a prickly demeanor when it came to anything white. And these days, a lot of things were white. They wisely decided not to bring up anything white in the vicinity of her, even though nobody knew exactly why she would lose her temper. Sakura frowned slightly and said, "I wonder what's wrong with her." Everyone was concerned about the Hyuga, but there was nothing they could do because she was always okay until she saw something white, or at least something that looked like white hair, at which point she would become frenzied. "I know, I asked my father to speak with Hiyashi Sama about Hinata, but Hiyashi Sama merely said that he didn't know what was making his daughter so angry." Ino replied with a scowl on her face. They swiftly shifted the conversation's topic. They discussed their training, the latest fashion, the missions they had been on, and the gossip that has been going on in the village. At random, then Ino brought up the topic of a certain blonde with a whiskered face. Ino inquired, "So how do you think Naruto's doing?" The girl with pink hair laughed and said, "Naruto? He's probably training with Jiraiya Sama to get stronger, that's for sure." "Yes, you're correct. You know what's weird, I genuinely miss my fellow blonde," the girl with platinum blonde hair replied. Sakura said, "Yeah, in a way I miss him too." With a smile sweeping across her features, Ino asked, "So, do you think he got handsome?" Raising an eyebrow, Sakura said, "Ino. This is Naruto we're talking about. Even if he did become a bit handsome, I bet he would still be the same old knuckle. Headed Naruto from the academy days." Sakura laughed. "Sakura, you're so foolish, you don't even realize it." "Oh come on Sakura. People change especially after 2 years. Come to think of it, does he have one more year of training left?" Ino responded. I just don't see it Ino. And to answer your question, yes he does have 1 year left of training." Sakura replied. "I do know one thing." Ino said. "If Naruto is as handsome as I believe him to be, then I am so going for him." She said. She didn't even have time to finish her sentence before she was overcome by a heavy aura. It felt as though her very soul was being painfully and slowly forced out of her body, leaving her feeling cold and powerless. She wanted to cry and curl up into a ball, but she was immobile. She was cut off from the world around her. Her breathing was the only sound she could hear. Her death appeared in visions, each one more graphic and gory than the last. Her motor skills returning, she was only able to raise her head a little. She then saw a vision of menacing pink eyes with slits in them. She could feel her skin melting as the eyes glared at her with a feral rage. Abruptly, she heard a voice, and the tone informed her that she had done something very foolish. She was completely unaware of her actions. The voice hissed, "He is mine." The voice, which was female and spoke in a tone so icy that it chilled Ino's bones to the bone, made her swallow a lump in her throat. W. What? Ino's tiny, terrified voice trailed off. "He is mine," exclaimed the woman. The platinum blonde asked fearfully, "W. Who is Y? Yours?" She had flashes of thought. Glimpses of a pink, slitted-eyed girl with silvery, white hair. Glimpses of the girl's time with Naruto, including their time spent together, their first date, the day they became a couple, and the night they truly became in love. And the time they had together following that evening. The voice hissed dangerously, "He is mine." Gulping, Ino stammered, "A. R-Y. U-T. T. Talking A. About N. Naruto?" There was only one thought on Ino's mind right now. What the heck is going on here? She pondered. The voice sounded almost purring in agreement with her response. That's when she realized that this voice belonged to someone, somewhere. The girl in the visions owned it. She is not able to lie. She observed her fellow blonde's happiness when he was with the girl with the silvery white hair. She also observed the girl's equal happiness with the blonde. And for some reason, the girl was able to place an astral mental projection of herself inside her own mind. The girl felt or heard Ino's words somehow. That is, everything here was real. However, it was also a mentality. Since she was a Yamanaka after all, Ino felt a small amount of her confidence return. Furthermore, Yamanaka specialized in mental techniques, so this ought to be easy. Correct? Even though what Ino said was a little hypocritical, you speak as if Naruto was a possession. Ino's response was eerie silence, like the quiet before a storm. Even with the sense of impending disaster, Ino went on. "I don't know who you are exactly," Ino said. "But you speak as if Naruto were an item. Do you even really love him?" Ino said. Since she had witnessed the girl and the blonde's happiness in the visions, she knew she was going too far. But ever since the academy, poor Hinta had a thing for the blonde. She merely stated that she would give the blonde a trial run. All bets were off if Ino would actually fall in love with her fellow blonde. She would also end things with him as gently as possible if they couldn't work out. Sadly for Ino, Shiroi's astral projection did not appreciate that Ino was doubting her love for Naruto. With uncertainty, Ino peered around, feeling nothing. She believed that the astral projection simply vanished after a few moments. However, she felt a malevolent aura behind her, and her breath caught in her throat. If anything, Ino felt even more alone and frigid than she had on the first occasion. She slowly and fearfully turned her head back. And Shiroi's astral projection was staring back at her, her eyes full of feral rage. Her lips tightened into a savage, angry snarl that showed off her growing fangs. How impudent! That blonde wonder if she still loves Naruto? The words replayed in her head, making her fury grow. Despite her unwavering love for Naruto, this slut. Could it be that she didn't love him? Oh, Shiroi will have fun shattering her. The astral Shiroi hissed, "I am going to break you." Shiroi only needed Ino's leg to twitch in order for her to suddenly lunge at her and intend to rip her head off her shoulders. When Ino saw her fangs gleam, she let out a scream. Sakura yelled, "Ino! Ino!" before striking her childhood buddy in the face. Sakura? Ino stammered and then frantically scanned her surroundings. All she saw were the worried looks on the faces of other villagers as they observed the two kunoichi. When Ino turned to face Sakura again, she had concern in her eyes. The girl with pink hair exclaimed, "Ino! What happened? You just suddenly froze up for a moment, then suddenly collapsed and screamed." After making one last check to make sure the girl wasn't there, Ino gave Sakura a tense smile. Hoping Sakura would take the hint, she said, "I'm fine, Sakura. Just had a strange daydream is all." Sakura regarded Ino with skepticism. After all, one does not just show up in the middle of the street at random. But when she noticed the beseeching look she was giving her, she gave in. She was about to say, "Okay, Ino. I guess if you're fine," when Ino shot her a quick, appreciative smile. She hurriedly departed after saying, "Thanks, Sakura. I'll see you later." She desired to discuss what had occurred with her father. And if mental abilities like the ones she just saw were actually possible. Sakura watched Ino leave with a worried and concerned expression. When Ino was out of her line of sight, she let out a sigh. She noticed that the sky was getting a little darker as she raised her gaze. The sun was just disappearing over the horizon, and night was slowly approaching. The woman with the pink hair decided to go home since she had nothing else to do. She couldn't shake the feeling, though, that Ino was concealing something significant. All she could hope was that nothing would go wrong. Sakura, poor Sakura. Once more, you are unaware of how mistaken you are. There will be an issue. Only for specific individuals. Tsunade watched, expressionless, as the sun sank below the horizon. Through some miracle, she had completed her paperwork, and now she awaited Jiraiya's first report in the past 2 years. They came to an agreement about it. In 2 years, Jiraiya would send her a report on Naruto's skills, allowing her to fully understand the strength of her surrogate son. Then, for the final year, the perverted sage would teach Naruto strategy. And now, at last, the female Hokage would learn about Naruto's immense power. The feeling of anticipation building inside her was uncontrollable. After 2 long years, she would finally know just how strong her surrogate son was. For what duration has it been? Since she last witnessed the radiant, comforting smile of the blonde? For what duration had it been? When had the last time she felt her maternal instincts threaten to take precedence? She also thought of Shizune as one of her children. The brunette woman was, however, at least 25. She was therefore unable to indulge Shizune's motherly instincts because she was an adult. But Naruto was a whole different story. He was still somewhat of a child because he wasn't even 18 yet. That is to say, she was allowed to play the role of mother to the younger blonde. A grin appeared on her face. That prick. He had the ability to make her feel like a mother even when he wasn't present. A little cloud of smoke drew her eye. When she looked away, Kosuke, the messenger toad, was the first thing she saw. Kosuke said, "Hey. Are you Senju Tsunade?" Tsunade just gave a head nod. The red toad handed the curvaceous blonde a scroll and said, "Message from Jiraiya." Tsunade nodded her thanks and took the scroll. The toad blinked. It was the first time he had ever received gratitude for delivering a message. Damn it, it felt good to be appreciated. Additionally deserving of respect were messengers. Kosuke greeted Tsunade with a brief hello before vanishing in a cloud of smoke. Tsunade eagerly awoke and peered inside the scroll. Her expression changed from excitement to disappointment halfway through. The letter said that he thought it would be best to give a detailed explanation of Naruto's abilities in person in a year. Given that they were both aware that some of the messages left on her desk had been inexplicably disappearing, copying, and then returning to the desk. The handwriting was never the same, so Tsunade knew they were copies. Tsunade believed Danzo's root was to blame, but she was unable to gather any proof. That much was true. Danzo was a slippery motherfucker. Still, she noticed something at the end of the note. Has Naruto made a future bride? She gave a single, double, and triple blink. Just before a huge smile appeared on her face. At last, Naruto, her adopted son, had given up on Sakura. Because Sakura berated the blonde almost non-stop, she had always believed that he was not the right fit for her. But she didn't voice her opinion because she knew the blonde was the most obstinate person there was. It was like trying to get a fucking brick to talk when you tried to get Naruto to do something he didn't like. It was not feasible. Trust me, I tried, haha. However, it seems that Shiroi made Naruto forget about the girl with the pink hair, and he became so enamored of her that he finished most of his training and missions fast in order to spend more time with her. And the girl quite eagerly reciprocated his feelings. She hadn't witnessed 2 individuals so enamored since. Kushina and Minato. A smile of nostalgia appeared on her face. She was reminded of Kushina, Minato, and Dan, the man she had fallen in love with, after hearing about the two. There was no doubt about it. Tsunade was eager for Shiroi to meet her. As Naruto, Shiroi, and Jiraiya completed the last leg of their training. Let's pay a visit to the blonde's former brother figure and longtime rival. In the darkness of the room, all that was visible were three slowly rotating Tomo eyes that were blood red in color. Yakushi Kabuto stood in the doorway as the door to the right opened, delivering his signature smug smile and taunting. The man with silver hair caught the red Sharingan eyes for a moment before they returned to the wall he had been staring at for hours. Kabuto spoke with ease, a smug smirk still crossing his features. "Good morning, Sasuke. Kun. Orochimaru. Sama is requesting you. Your pet has killed another one of our subordinates." There were a few quiet moments before Sasuke answered with a low grunt. Sasuke said, "I told you all before." He concluded, "I don't care what Tia does." He glared at Kabuto and then snapped, "And she isn't my pet." He then returned his attention to staring at the wall. Kabuto said, attempting to elicit a response from the Uchiha, "That's too bad, Sasuke. Kun, because Orochimaru Sama has been thinking about cutting off all ties with her." The brunette said icily, "Like I said before, what he does to her is of no concern to me." 3 years had passed since Sasuke's Konoha defection. 2 years of nearly constant training. And he was happy with the outcome. He focused on improving his taijutsu and ninjutsu skills for the first year. He was pleased to declare that while his taijutsu was on high level Anbu, his ninjutsu was at the low level Kage level. They spent the second year honing his genjutsu. He declared with great satisfaction that his genjutsu abilities were Kage level, equivalent to Uchiha Itachi. The brother he wishes to kill the most is his older brother. His entire being erupted with hatred at the mere thought of Itachi. He had followed Itachi's advice. He let his resentment of him fester and intensify. His unwavering hatred for Itachi would not let up until Itachi was killed. And anyone who gets in his way, he will kill. He would completely destroy anyone who tries to stop him, especially if the blonde with the whiskers tries to stop him. In the end, they worked on his newly discovered interest in Kenjutsu during his final year, and he was pleased to report that his abilities were at least at a high level, A rank on the verge of S rank. He felt that with his newly acquired power, he was finally prepared to murder Itachi. Kabuto scowled slightly and said, "Oh? So you don't care what Orochimaru Sama does to her?" After all, Orochimaru desired for Sasuke to mate with the girl because more Sharingans would come into Orochimaru's care if they did. Sasuke said, his Sharingan eyes changing back to his typical onyx black color, "That's right. So do what you want with her." Kabuto shrugged and started to say something, but as soon as the door swung open, he stopped and jumped back, almost getting hit. Angrily, a female voice exclaimed, "Uchiha! Get off your fat lazy ass and get me some damn food." Sasuke just gave the girl a chilly glare, but she was unfazed. Long, dark pink hair cascaded down the girl's back. Her 2 long bangs framed her face and ended at her stomach, but she didn't seem to mind that they swayed messily and narrowly into her eyes. She looked at the Uchiha with her cold, angry dark blue eyes set in a glare. Her nose was small but pointed, and her eyelashes had a slight curl to them. She covered her ample bust with an unzipped leather jacket and a black skin tight shirt. The last piece of her outfit were her dark blue shorts and a blood-red belt around her waist that contained multiple pouches. She was a lovely girl overall. However, what would actually grab someone's interest were her bird-like feet with razor sharp talons, her black feathered wings on her forearms, and her pointed ears, as well as her pale blue skin. Tia was the name of this girl, and she played the harp. "Don't look at me like that, you bitch-ass Uchiha. Now get off your ass and give me some fucking food now," she grumbled. Did he fail to mention her foul mouth and extremely volatile temper? They got to know each other when he and the Orochimaru were relocating to a different base. He watched her pick up a wolf from the ground and devour it. She tried killing him right away as soon as she saw him. They stopped fighting when they saw the hatred in each other's eyes, but she almost died and he barely made it out alive. He was curious, so he asked her who she detested. She gave him a severe look for a few minutes before responding that she detested an old friend of hers who had killed her brother. She continued to give him a severe look for a few more minutes before asking him whom he detested. In response, he expressed his hatred towards his elder brother for killing his entire clan. That day, they came to a mutual understanding. They were not friends, in fact, they couldn't be further apart. But because they could understand each other's hatred, they were able to put up with each other's presence. They wouldn't feel guilty about leaving each other behind, though, if they had to. Orochimaru tried several times to experiment on the dark pink-haired harpy because he was captivated by her. That is, until Tia threatened to use her talons to rip off his crotch. If at all possible, Orochimaru paled before he backpedaled and never attempted to test her again. Another issue was that from time to time a new subordinate would mention that she was Sasuke's toy. Tia killed them instantly, leaving nothing but a smear on the wall in a gory and bloody mess. She was very clear in her hatred of Sasuke, something the Uchiha also felt. Sasuke declared, making sure to keep his steaming hot breakfast in his line of sight, "I am not going to give my breakfast." Naturally, Tia continued to treat Sasuke as if he were her slave despite this. With a frown on her face, Tia uttered, "Bitch, you're not even eating." Sasuke's eye twitched. She was so bothersome. He replied coolly, "I'm waiting for it to cool off." Tia looked at the Uchiha in blank stares, raising an eyebrow. "You're a little pussy-ass bitch, aren't you? You can't even handle a hot breakfast, damn you're such a pussy. How you survived this long in the world I'll never know," she said. She also used every opportunity to disparage the Uchiha. Was this how Naruto felt when Sakura made fun of him? Sasuke quivered. If that's the case, he became slightly more respectful of the blonde. Kabuto asked, a smirk returning to his face, "Well, I hope you're done killing our subordinates, Tia?" Tia gazed at Kabuto, seemingly amazed that he was still alive. "Oh, the prissy bitch is actually alright. I was worried that your precious Orochimaru-sama had stretched your ass out too much last night," she said with an air of disbelief. When Sasuke noticed Kabuto twitch, he smiled viciously. Everyone was irritated by Tia. She had that effect on everyone. In particular, Orochimaru. Heck, Sasuke believes that she deliberately agitates everyone in order to make them angry. The harpy turned around and yelled at Sasuke, "What are you smirking about, bitch? Give that fucking breakfast you have there now." Sasuke twitched and then let out an annoyed sigh. He gave the harpist his breakfast in silence, as if he had lost his appetite. Tia gaily inspected the food before turning to frown at the Uchiha and Kabuto. Sasuke noticed the frown and said, "What?" Kabuto just arched an eyebrow. She slowly demanded, her words laced with deadly intent, "I'm not eating in the same room as you two. So, get the fuck out." Shrugging, Kabuto quietly left the room and stood by the door, knowing what was about to happen. Sasuke said icily, "I'm not leaving. This is my room after all." Tia's expression changed to one of anger, fury, and hatred before she menacingly snarled at the boy with the dark hair. "Bitch, do you understand me, bitch? I don't care if you're the fucking king of the world. When I tell you to do something, you do it." She yelled, and then her figure vanished, sending Sasuke flying across the room at breakneck speed and colliding head on with the wall. Tia sneered, "Next time don't fucking question me, bitch," and slammed the door firmly. Sasuke rose slowly to his feet, his whole body trembling with unbridled rage as his Sharingan eyes glared viciously at the door leading to his room. Kabuto muttered, "She is such a loose cannon." With a grunt, Sasuke stood silently and limped a little down the hallways. Soon, his objective, no, his goal would come to pass. He was going to kill Orochimaru soon, when he was at his weakest, and then pursue Itachi. He would get even with his clansmen soon. All of that practice and hard work would soon pay off. He just needed to wait for the right opportunity to attack. He only needed to be patient to know when the ideal opportunity would arise. Patience was, after all, very fruitful. Inside the cave, all that was visible was darkness. There was nothing to be seen, just darkness. In the center of the cave stood a massive humanoid statue, its palms open and arms extended. On one of the fingers, a single figure gradually materialized and was soon joined by a second, smaller figure. Her orange eyes opened when the shorter one did. In a deep, dead voice, the taller man asked, "Conan, did you contact them?" As he slowly opened his silvery purple eyes, which had several rings around the pupil. The smaller person next to him nodded briefly and confirmed that, despite having a tone more emotionless than her male counterpart, she was a woman by speaking in a much softer voice. "Yes, Pain. Sama. They will arrive shortly," she said. Pain only gave a small nod of his head before they started to wait for the arrival of the other members of their group. They didn't have to wait long because, similar to him, a number of other figures gradually started to phase into existence. Their eyes were all that was visible about them. The tallest male asked, his beady eyes gleaming at each of them with a shark-like grin that said, well, it's been a while since we gathered like this. It's that time already, huh?" 3 spinning Tomo slowly rotated across the pupils as his partner, the shorter male next to him, simply opened his crimson red eyes. "Kisame. The red-eyed person said with a detached drawl. "We did not come here to banter. No doubt leader Sama has called to assign us our targets," he concluded. Kisame laughed hysterically. "Sorry, Itachi-san. It's just that I'm strangely excited." He cracked a grin. Another person spoke up, his blue eyes glistening at the thought of his art. I just want our target assigned already so I can get back to working on my art, His partner with the hunchback scowled and his eyes glared coldly at him. "Deidara, shut up. The longer we make this meeting, the longer my spies are forced to wait. And I do not like to keep people waiting." Shortly after, he remarked, "And your so-called art is nothing compared to mine." Before Sasori's final words could register in his mind, Deidara said, "Sorry about that, Sasori. Donna. What did you say about my art? True art is a bang, not some useless puppet like the ones you create." He grumbled. Sasori said in a serious tone, "And I told you, Deidara, true art is eternal." Deidara took offense at the remark. "Ha ha ha. You fuckers are entertaining, you know that?" Questioned a different participant, his amusement and haughtiness visible in his red eyes. His partner said coldly, "Hidan, shut up. Your voice irritates me." His green eyes with red sclera glared at his partner indifferently. Still, you could see how much contempt he had for his partner if you looked closely. Hidan angrily yelled, pointing a finger at his partner, "Hey, fuck you, Kakuzu." Kazuku said icily and dangerously, "If you want to keep that finger, then I suggest you lower it, Hidan." Hidan just laughed. With an almost maniacal smile, he exclaimed, "And what are you gonna do about it?" "I have no regrets about killing you," the bounty hunter said. Pain said, "Enough." With composure, but everyone could instantly sense a hint of sharpness in his voice. All arguments and conversations ended right away. The entire room heard Pain say, "You are here to receive your assignments. Not bicker among yourselves." Everyone was alert and standing. Everyone knew you had to pay attention when Pain spoke the way he was speaking now. If you disregarded the rule, then the most recent violator of that regulation met a most agonizing end. The Akatsuki quickly learned to fear Pain because it meant that their soul would be slowly torn from their body while they stabbed them with various weapons and then brought them back to life to repeat the process. Glancing at the bounty hunter and Jashinist, Pain said, "Hidan, Kakuzu. Do we have enough funds to assist us in our objectives?" With an indifferent expression, Kakuzu straightened and said, "We have more than enough, leader." Sama. Very good, Pain shot back, then shifted his focus to the Akatsuki member who hadn't said anything since the meeting. Zetsu. Tell us the information you have on the Jinchurikis. Pain said. Zetsu, the spy for the Akatsuki, straightened now that he was the center of attention. Zetsu started, then his partner took over. The Ichibi Jinchuriki is now the case cage of Sanagakure, and rarely ever leaves the village. The Nibi Jinchuriki has been completing missions all around the Land of Lightning lately. The Sanbi is still reforming, but it won't be long now before it reforms completely. The Yanbi Jinchuriki is currently wandering the Land of Earth, while the Gobi Jinchuriki is living in a cottager near the border between the Land of Earth and Fire. It will be easy to capture them both, seeing as the Tsuchikage doesn't care about them. Black Zetsu said, prior to his white half taking over. White Zetsu said, the Rokubi Jinchuriki is currently residing in a small castle near the border of the Land of Water and Rain. The Nanabi is residing in Takigakure for the moment. His black half took over the remaining portion of the speech. The Hachibi Jinchuriki is still locked away in Kumo, so trying to capture it would prove to be difficult. And the Kyubi Jinchuriki is still with Jiraiya of the Sanin. Concluded the Black Zetsu. After giving the spy a nod, Pain turned to face his subordinates. Your targets are as follow. Sasori and Deidara will head towards Suna and capture the Ichibi Jinchuriki. Kakuzu and Hidan will work on capturing the Nibi Jinchuriki. Zetsu will spy on the other nations and inform us if they plan to retaliate and take their Jinchuriki back. Pain stated prior to concentrating on Kisame as well as Itachi. Itachi and Kisame nodded at Pain's plan and strategy. Itachi and Kisame, you will remain on standby. However, should you get the opportunity, I want you to capture the Kyubi Jinchuriki. But that is only a secondary objective, understood? Pain said. Any questions? Nobody raised their hand because they all knew exactly what they had to do to bring the Jinchuriki back to life and they all understood their mission's goals. But that didn't mean they couldn't use deadly techniques if they activated their Biju's chakra. Pain said, dismissed. With a quick phasing out, everyone rushed to finish their assignments. After what seemed like an eternity in the cave's darkness, Pain closed his eyes and spoke. Conan was left alone. He drew lead calmly and emotionlessly, I know you were there. After a brief period of silence, one mature Sharingan eye gradually opened in the shadows. The figure said, so now the hunt for the Jinchuriki begins, As he spoke, his voice was deep, rough, cold, and casual. The man thought idly, I wonder how much the Kyubi Jinchuriki has grown. Pain whispered, you've taken an unusual interest in the Kyubi Jinchuriki. Then he opened his eyes and looked blankly at Toba's swirling masked face. Toby sighed. Can you blame me? After all, not only is he the Jinchuriki of the most powerful Biju, he is also the son of the Yondaime Hokage. Toby clarified. If anything, I expect the boy to already be an S class shinobi. He said. Pain spoke with confidence and a hint of arrogance, saying, it doesn't matter. In the end he will know pain just like the rest of the world. And an era of true peace can be born. Stupid. All that exists in this world is a harsh and icy reality. Toby thought, there is only Project Tasuki no Mi. There is no true peace. Toby said, do what you will, Pain, but remember I am watching, and then he slowly disappeared from view in a swirling vortex. There was silence for a few moments before Pain turned to face Conan. Is something wrong, Conan? Inquired the man with round eyes. Before she spoke, Conan quickly scanned the area to make sure Toby was gone. Now that they were alone, she replied, referring to him by his real name, I don't trust that man Nagato. Pain just gave Conan's words a nod of his head. Nor do I, Conan. However, his help is greatly required if we are to capture the Biju, and work our way towards true peace, by showing this world true pain. The leader of the Akatsuki stated. Conan proclaimed, and I will stand with you every step of the way, Nagato. Without saying anything, Pain simply phased out of existence, and Conan came along soon after. They failed to notice Setsu's black form vanishing into the wall. Shiroi was happy to watch as two kids played happily in their backyard. It was impossible to imagine how happy their faces could possibly be. She had a contented and loving smile on her face. The boy, the first child, had whisker marks on his cheeks that had faded. Spiky golden blonde hair with silver striations that falls to the shoulder. Slitted pupil, bright blue eyes with a hint of pink in them. Additionally, if you were to examine the boy's smile closely, you would notice that he has tiny fangs in his teeth. The Uzumaki spiral was printed on the back of his black shirt. He was dressed in blue shorts and red sandals. The girl was the second child. Had fading cheek whisker marks as well. Long, silvery white hair with hints of golden blonde running through it. Pale pink eyes with a hint of blue, along with a slitted pupil. If you looked closely, you could see that she shared the same fangs in her teeth as her male counterpart. Her sundress was yellow and featured a red Uzumaki spiral on the front. Her feet were adorned with green sandals. She smiled at the happy way the two kids played together. She looked away as she sensed someone was following her, only to confront her spouse and lover's face. He had not changed all that much. His hair, which was golden blonde, remained disheveled and coarse just like the day he was born. His vivid blue eyes gave the kids a loving, caring look. His scruffy beard remained just as cute and endearing as she had remembered. She was relieved that he was not wearing his robes today, even though he was still holding Altair in its sheath by his side. Naruto gave Shiroi a tender smile before giving her a cheek kiss. She flushed a little at that. When they saw, the two kids ran over to give them hugs with their arms extended. Her whole being filled with warmth and happiness when the kids uttered those two words. 2. Chan. Chan. After a pleasant and wonderful dream, Shiroi slowly opened her eyes. Even so, thinking about the two kids she had seen in the dream made her face flush. They were breathtakingly lovely to behold. Like Naruto, they already had a special place in her heart even though they didn't exist yet. Referring to the blonde, she looked away from the window and toward his soundly dozing self. His hair disheveled, perhaps even more so than it had been previously. He held her close to him, a contented and peaceful smile on his lips. Her blush subsided as she recalled that their activities from the previous night had left them sleeping in the nude. How incredibly strong the blonde was, Cammy thought. Despite the fact that they had sex almost every night when they felt lust for one another or wanted to make love. How much stamina he had still amazed her. She almost let out a weary yawn as she flushed. They were active for almost the whole night, once more. However, since it was now morning, it was improper for a woman to sleep in. All she needed to do now was figure out how to rouse her mate. With a playful grin, she considered how to wake up. She planted a gentle peck on his chest and gradually moved up from there, leaving behind kisses in her wake. She kissed his lips and chin multiple times before moving on to his neck. When she heard him groan with pleasure, she smiled. She paused, looking at the mark on his neck with a triumphant smirk. It served as a reminder that she was the only one who owned him. It meant the same thing as the mark on her neck. He had her all to himself. And that was how she desired it to be. She kissed him lightly, exactly where it hurts. And when he made an unconscious little moan, she smiled with delight. Without any more argument, she bared her teeth and bit down on his neck, keeping her eyes slightly open to witness his awakening. Naruto's eyes opened after a span of 3 seconds. He turned to look at her, and he smiled as he did so, his eyes full of love and laughter. "Must you wake me like this all the time? Shiroi. Chan?" he murmured. With a quick wink, Shiroi released his neck, content with her current supply of blood. She replied, "I like waking you up like this, Naruto." Kun. After shooting her a funny glance, Naruto resumed his speech. "Do you also have to straddle me?" he questioned, smirking. Even though his cheeks were flushed. "After all, you are both in your undies and your partner is straddling you with her nude body. Try not to get a boner, it's not possible." With a little giggle, Shiroi asked, "Oh, is Naruto Kun getting a bit of morning wood?" In jest. Pressing her lips to his, she whispered in a seductive way, "Well, maybe we should rectify that." For a few moments, they kissed slowly before the kiss became hotter and more intense. Just as they were about to advance, there was a tap on their door. Both of them stopped suddenly and stared at the door, Shiroi blankly, though in her mind it was a completely different story, as she was thinking of various ways to brutally and painfully kill the person behind the door in the most violent and agonizing way possible. Naruto had a confused expression on her face. With his voice somewhat muffled through the door, the perverted sage known as Jiraiya yelled, "Gaki! Get your ass out here, would ya?" With a sigh, Naruto gathered several bedsheets around his waist and headed for the door. "Yes? Arrow. Sensei?" Naruto questioned after opening the door so that Jiraiya and not Shiroi could see him. He began, "Yeah, Gaki. Get your stuff together and get ready, we're going to leave soon in." But stopped when he realized that Naruto's state, or specifically, his lips adorned with kiss marks. Jiraiya quickly made the connection after noticing the blonde's mildly irritated expression on him. With a sly look on his face, he asked, "Were you and Shiroi getting ready to get active?" With a swift motion, Naruto closed the door and almost struck the perverted hermit in the face. While waiting for the scream of agony that Jiraiya would undoubtedly give, Naruto frowned a little when he heard perverse laughter instead, which was still audible but had a lower volume. His eyes met Shiroi with regret as he sighed and said, "Sorry Shiroi Chan, but it's time to leave now, so he got to get dressed." Shiroi scowled for a moment before letting out a sigh and saying, "Fine. Let's just get dressed already." While putting on their clothes, Naruto reflected on his final year of training. For the blonde, the final year of his training was interesting. Jiraiya discovered that, after 3 months of learning strategy, he was only marginally below Kakashi at an acceptable level. Nevertheless, the blonde disliked strategizing prior to a fight. After all, it goes without saying that you will stick to your plan if you planned before the battle. However, what if something unanticipated occurred? And you wouldn't let it be adjusted? That was why, in the heat of battle, he enjoyed making plans and devising quick strategies. He wasn't altering his fighting style. It was just who he was. He and everyone else were shocked to learn that he possessed a third element after that. He was surprised to find that he had a slight affinity for lightning. The blonde was taken aback, but he dismissed it and learned how to harness his newfound chakra nature. After 6 months, the blonde thought Jiraiya agreed with him that he was at a respectable level with his new nature. His bond with the Kyuubi also took an intriguing turn. The blonde demonstrated that he was a skilled fighter, so the Kyuubi said he would permit him to use 2 tails of his chakra. The blonde thought of the Kyuubi as a friend, even though he was sometimes a sarcastic ass. Not to mention that, in a sense, the Kyuubi had been with him since birth. Though he was unaware of it, the blonde had always had support from the Kyuubi. While Kyuubi claimed that it was only natural for the king of all Biju to take care of his subjects, it didn't seem as though he blushed. Assuming one was a human. In addition, the blonde stood in for him. Therefore, should he pass away, it would be seen as a failure on the part of Biju, not only for having a feeble container but also for permitting his container to pass away shamefully. At that, Naruto snorted. The Kyuubi seemed like a little tsundere to him. He was correct. There were moments when he behaved like a worried mother hen tending to her child, and there were other moments when he was aloof toward the blonde. Naturally, the enormous fox refuted all of that. After putting on his robes and remaining clothes, he checked his appearance in the mirror to make sure everything fit properly. Checking with knives thrown. Check for hidden blades. Darts check the robe. Crossbow verification. Check the pouches. Kunai verification. And lastly, Altair. Altair, where the hell was he? Frantically, the blonde cast a glance around for his faithful sword. The blonde felt a pulse beat on his arm and turned to see Altair leaning against the wall at the opening of the door. With a sigh of relief, Naruto turned to face the blonde, who carefully picked up the blade. "I felt like I lost you there, Altair," Naruto remarked with a hint of relief. Satisfied to be back in his wielder's hand, Altair pulsed. The blonde slipped Altair into its sheath and let it dangle around his waist. After giving himself another once over and noticing that everything was in order, the blonde headed for the door and bided his time until Shiroi had finished getting dressed. His fully clothed companion appeared from the bathroom door and stepped in front of him before he had to wait long. The blonde asked, "Are you ready, Shiroi Chan?" Shiroi nodded briefly to him. Naruto grinned, pulled on his hood, opened the door, and the two of them left the room, walking down the stairs and through the hallways. As soon as they made it downstairs, they saw the older toad sage smiling and patiently waiting for them by the hotel's exit door. Grinning. The 3 of them walked out of the hotel, more like smirking. Now was the moment. It's time to go back to Konoha. Of the 2 eternal gate guards, Azumo was one. Sighed, realizing that his best friend Katetsu was back to sleep. The bastard was incredibly indolent. Azumo let out another sigh. He was aware of the parents of the child from Uzumaki and missed them. After all, he had had multiple encounters with the Yondaime and his spouse. He was familiar enough with them to realize that the child's resemblance to the Yondaime was not coincidental, and that the child also possessed his mother's disposition. Given that the masked Jonin was adamant about including the blonde on his team even after he passed the academy, he had a suspicion that Kakashi was also well aware of the blonde's identity. For the blonde, Konoha's own snake mistress, Anko, had to be argued with by heck the Icha Icha fan. Anko was drawn to the blonde because he felt that she was the only one who could fully relate to him and provide him with the care he required, given their similar lives. The blonde was the son of Kakashi's sensei, and only he could truly explain to the blonde the meaning of the Will of Fire. Observing that the blonde was fully aware of the meaning of the Will of Fire, he felt it was a bunch of nonsense. Kotetsu and Anko were aware that Kakashi was only being a little self-centered by trying to maintain the closest possible relationship with his sensei's son. The closest he could come to the blonde without raising suspicions was by having her become his Jonin sensei. Anko experienced some heartbreak when the Sandame decided to support Kakashi. He should know. As Anko's friend, he was aware of her depression and disappointment at not being able to train the blonde and take him under her tutelage. He recalled how she used to look at Kakashi with jealousy when he talked about Naruto during gatherings where the majority of the Jonin talked about their students. And how upset she was when, on an A rank mission, he only taught his team how to walk in trees. She lost it and yelled at Kakashi, asking him to explain why he had sent Genin on an unsupported A rank mission that had been upgraded to a C rank. According to Kakashi, he let his group determine whether or not to move forward. Anko naturally cried out that he should have called for reinforcement. Anko became enraged and declared that Kakashi's tardiness and laziness disqualified him from being a teacher. Since then, their friendship has been a little rocky. But Anko was shocked to learn that Kakashi was putting them forward for the Chunin examinations. She lost her temper with the former Anbu and snapped again. She walked over to Kakashi after the meeting and voiced her disapproval of his plan of action. She reiterated her earlier assertion that he was unfit to serve as a Jonin sensei. It was as if you wanted to murder your team to send new Genin to the Chunin exams. And that it's likely that he didn't even prepare his group for the tests, much less impart any knowledge on anything other than teamwork, which is pointless if the members of the team don't work well together. The Uchiha felt that he didn't even need a team, and that much was obvious. Naruto was now a member of Kakashi's team and his student, so if she didn't like it, she could take it up with the Hokage, Kakashi claimed. Anko just shot Kakashi a chilly, enraged look and informed him that her sole purpose in acting as an exam proctor was to watch over her adopted younger brother. The relationship between the two made many of those who heard her blink, and before anyone could question her about why she thought of the blonde as her little brother, she stormed out of the building, giving everyone who saw it a glare. When she discovered that Kakashi was training Sasuke rather than the blonde, she became enraged once more. She then started searching for the blonde. She was shocked to discover that he was studying under Jiraiya. Knowing he was in, possibly, good hands made her smile. She decided to once again give Kakashi a piece of her mind after seeing that. Nobody was aware of their relationship, but everyone saw Kakashi tremble whenever a rubber duck and a senbon were brought up. For Izumo, it was kind of funny. Observing Kakashi tremble each time someone brought up a rubber duck and some candy. With a small shake of his head, he emptied his mind and turned to face the horizon. But then his eyes narrowed as he saw three figures walking leisurely and slowly right towards the gate. His best friend was startled enough to squeak in surprise when he was kicked awake and caused to tumble out of his chair. He chuckled in silence and then straightened up upon realizing that Kotetsu was staring at him. He waved his hand silently to the three figures approaching the gates. Kotetsu's body tensed as they approached, but his eyes widened gradually before taking on a bored expression. The three figures got close enough at that point. Their mouths fell apart. Jiraiya of the Sannin led the two. It took them a few moments to recover their composure when they saw the girl behind him. She had pink slitted eyes and silvery white hair. The third and last figure, though, completely caught them off guard. Those garments. The gauntlets bearing a big, nine-tailed fox image. The sword with an eagle blade fastened to his side. On his back, a crossbow. Under the alias, Fox Assassin, it was the A-ranked unknown shinobi. The fact that the hood was off his head, though, caused them to focus more on his attractive face. Spiky golden blonde hair with spiked bangs framing his face, tied in what appeared to be a low ponytail. Bright blue eyes that had a joyful expression as they looked over the village. And his cheeks whisker marks. It is not possible. No. That was. With a big smile on their faces, Azumo heard his best friend say, Uzumaki Naruto. They ignored the fact that the blonde's arm was entwined with the white girl's like a married couple, despite their insignificant observation. Their favorite blonde was back, after all. Rumors could wait. With a wide smile on his face, Naruto said, Yo. Katetsu, Azumo. Still on guard duty, huh? As soon as he got close enough to the two eternal gate guards. The blonde and Sanin laughed, as did Katetsu and Azumo. Shiroi, however, just gave them a critical look for a short while before laughing and giggling with them. Jiraiya noticed that, too, but he put that away for later. Katetsu, managing his laughter, said, Naruto. It's great that you're back, man. Konoha has been a little dead since you left, to be honest. Azumo grinned sweetly and taunted the blonde, asking, and who knew you would bring back a girlfriend, The Chunin expected the blonde to stutter and stammer, but they were surprised when she did not. He put his arm around Shiroi's waist, grinning. Naruto said to the girl next to him, Katetsu, Azumo. I want you to meet Shiroi. Chan. My mate and future wife. His tone was one of warmth and love. Shiroi blushed profusely next to her partner and future husband. They had taken to calling each other that even though it was informal because it was clear that's what they wanted. For a brief while, Katetsu and Azumo were silent, but then they both shot Shiroi a cold look. They both leaned back after a few moments, their faces showing satisfaction. At the same moment, they both said, we approve. Shiroi experienced a sudden wave of rage. Who were they to criticize their union? Who were they to judge her suitability for Naruto? Who were they to suggest that she and Naruto required their blessing? Naruto's tone was a little tense and disapproving, as if he agreed with her. Since when did I need anyone's approval on who I chose to marry? Katetsu and Azumo exchanged a quick look before beaming at the blonde. With warmth and a hint of fondness in his voice, Katetsu said, since that day. When you were only 6, Naruto. The day you met us, was the day we decided to be your surrogate older brothers. Naruto tensed up, then grinned broadly while he fixed his gaze on the two gate guards. Thanks for caring, guys. Shiroi, meanwhile, pursed her lips in contemplation. At 6 years old, Naruto. She looked through the memories she had taken from the blonde after drinking his blood. Well. At the age of 6. That was around the time, she realized with a slight widening of her eyes. Regarding his 5th strike. Where one of them attempted to gouge his eyes and they almost tore his arm off. But he was saved by these two Chunin. And they. Whenever they could, they treated him to ramen. She gave the two a respectful glance. They were certainly worthy of being referred to as his elder brothers. Azumo smiled and gave the blonde the thumbs up, saying, it's no problem, Ododo. Now get your ass back in the village already. Hokage. Sama wants to see you, no doubt. With a wide, fraternal smile, Katetsu motioned for the blonde to come into the village. Naruto grinned and said, thanks. Anikis. Jiraiya smiled at the blonde, glad he now had role models in the form of brothers. Gazing intently at Naruto's smile, Shiroi couldn't help but smile too, as she took in this touching scene. The three of them moved quickly into the village, getting ready on the inside as well as the outside. Katetsu remarked, hard to believe he's back, huh? Yeah. And he's matured quite well as well. I guess, all that time with Jiraiya. Sama worked wonders for the blonde. He even has a future wife. Azumo responded. Katetsu smiled and said, yeah. I'm glad he forgot about that Sakura chick. Azumo turned to watch which way the blonde and the other passengers were going. He asked absently, I wonder. Just how powerful is the Gaki now? Who knows? He's been with Asanin for 3 full years. He must be way more powerful than Kakashi now. Replied Katetsu. Azumo said, you have a point there. A familiar voice called their names, interrupting the couple as they were about to continue talking. The two called out, Katetsu. San, Azumo. San. As they turned to see a certain pink-haired girl who was 12 years old behind her. Katetsu said with a detached gaze, ah, Sakura. San, and the Konohamaru Corps. Azumo laughed a little at Kotetsu's glare from Sakura and the 3 children. Azumo, noticing the looks of curiosity he was getting, said, "Hey. You 4 will never guess who just came back." Ignoring the looks some of the villagers were giving them, Jiraiya idly remarked, staring at his apprentice, "So Gaki, did Konoha change much since you were last here?" After taking a quick look around, Naruto closed his eyes. It was an understatement to say, "Nope, not at all Arrow. Sensei. Same people, same attitude, different day." A few of the villagers occasionally waved to the blonde, while others just shot him a blank stare before going back to their jobs. While the majority merely scowled slightly at the blonde. A few of the women in the group gave him seductive and predatory looks. However, when Shiroi gave the females her evil eye, they cowered in terror. The majority of the men gave Shiroi seductive glances, but Naruto's sudden burst of murderous intent caused them to perspire and turn away, daring them not to look back. Jiraiya broke out in a cold sweat at both Naruto's response and what they were doing. "It's time to teach those pathological creatures that they shouldn't mess with your medkit." Kyuubi bellowed, a little irate that those. That's how insignificant worms dared to stare at the maid of his container. He's not gonna take it. With a bloodthirsty agreement, Altair pulsed. With a triumphant expression, the giant fox said, "See? Even the sword listens to me. Guys. I promise not to kill them," Naruto thought to himself. Kyuubi gave a disappointed snort. Kyuubi went Tsunere for a moment before offering, "You could always maim them Ki. I mean Gaki." Altair gave a pulsation. The blonde thought, "No, I won't maim them Kyuubi, and no, Altair, I won't hack off their limbs." She also sent more murderous thoughts to another male who was lustfully staring at Shiroi. Once more, Kyuubi snorted with disappointment. Before returning to his slumber, Kyuubi said, "Fine then, your choice. Just wake me up when something interesting happens." Disappointed that he was unable to chop off the limbs of the villagers who were staring at his wielder's mate with lust, Altair pulsed. "Don't worry, Altair," said Naruto, placing his palm on Altair's pummel. "I promise to use you in our clone sparring session tonight." Naruto pondered as Altair pulsated with satisfaction. Naruto glanced up for no apparent reason, found a good vantage point, and smiled slightly before he was forced to send more killing intent to another villager who was staring at Shiroi with lust. Naruto said, "Hold on a minute, I want to look out over the entire village from that pole," before sprinting to the top of the pole and stopping. Jiraiya muttered, "Show off." With a small smile, Shiroi shook her head and looked up to see her future husband perched on a hilltop overlooking the whole village. The blonde thought rhetorically as a fox. Like grin appeared on his face. "Hey, they finally added Tsunade Ba Chan's face on the mountain, huh?" The blonde asked. It's true that Tsunade's face was added to Hokage Mountain. The blonde grinned, thinking how long it had been since he'd seen Shizune, his older surrogate sister, and Tsunade. The wind caused his robes to billow and his hair to sag a little. He shut his eyes. He cherished the sensation of the wind on his face and his sense of liberation. A voice exclaimed, "Naruto. Ni-chan." With excitement. Glancing down from his perch, the blonde saw 4 figures staring up at him. He smiled, then flung out his arms, jumped from his perch, and dove to the ground like an eagle pursuing its meal. When he landed, he repositioned his body to allow himself to land on his feet. And he landed squarely on his feet, giving a loud thud. He stood up slowly and turned to face the startled newcomers. He said jokingly, "Yo Konohamaru, Udon, Moegi." To the 3 recently graduated genin. He turned to face the final figure, nodding to her and grinning amiably, "Yo Sakura." Others who had just arrived gave Naruto a hard time about his clothes and took a closer look at his sword before putting it away for later. The temperature of the air around them dropped sharply. Was winter really arriving so soon? It was extremely cold, almost as cold as the Arctic, for some reason. Apart from your soul was the only thing that was truly freezing. The blank expression Shiroi was giving Sakura made Jiraiya shudder. Her eyes briefly flashed with sadistic delight before returning to their blank state. However, Jiraiya was aware of her split-second expression. When she wanted to slowly torture someone and then cause them to die as slowly and painfully as possible, she would look like that. He prayed a little in his mind, feeling sorry for the girl with the pink hair. He nearly felt sorry for her. Nearly. Sakura noticed a chill appear on the back of her neck. She experienced. It was almost as if her very soul was being chilled. It was hollow and cold. And it vanished as swiftly as it appeared. She really took in Naruto's appearance now that the unsettling feeling had subsided. And her face took on a hint of pink. Who knew that Naruto, the little shrimp she knew, would grow to be much taller and more attractive? Sakura was a little shocked to discover that he was now even more attractive than Sasuke. She gave a small shake of her head. He was probably still the same dumb blonde she was familiar with, implying that he was still smitten with her. She smiled at the blonde, sure of her assessment. Sakura asked, smiling, as she fixed her gaze on the blonde, "So Naruto, do I look more womanly now since the last time you saw me?" However, she experienced a wave of confusion upon realizing that Naruto's expression remained composed. She felt as though someone was staring straight into her head, so when she felt movement, she looked to her right. She was shocked to see a girl with silvery white hair move to stand next to the blonde, despite the fact that the blonde was taller than the girl with white hair. She couldn't shake the sensation that she was in the company of a ferocious lion that was assessing her. It seemed to her that this girl held the key to her life. Gazing into her slitted pink eyes, Sakura couldn't help but get the feeling that she had just made a foolish decision and was going too far. Furthermore, she was unsure of the exact territory she was stepping on. Finally, Naruto said in a courteous way, "Nah Sakura, you haven't changed at all since I last saw you." Sakura's eye twitched at his response, and she stared at the blonde angrily, forgetting the unsettling feeling in the air, though she was also shocked inwardly by how politely he had spoken. Konohamaru asked, blushing as he gazed at the girl, "Naruto. Ni-chan. Who's the girl next to you?" Udon blushed just by glancing at her. Moegi, meanwhile, was transfixed by the girl's beauty. "Shiroi. Chan, would you like to introduce yourself or should I?" inquired the blonde, as Naruto grinned. Sakura observed the Konohamaru core, and how he addressed her as Chan. Before turning to face the four people, Shiroi gave the blonde a tender smile and said, "No, I can do it, Naruto. Kun." Her eyes gleamed as she said, "Hello, it's a pleasure to meet you. My name is Shiroi, though I'm not sure if that's the right thing I should say." Sakura was the only one who did not notice the sparkle in her eyes. Sakura's eyes only slightly narrowed. By that, what did she mean? Moegi inquired, "What do you mean by that, Shiroi? San?" Shiroi smiled kindly at the three genin, but when she turned to smile at Sakura, it turned icy and mocking. "Well, I guess I should give a proper introduction, no?" Shiroi laughed. "As I said, my name is Shiroi, but since Naruto Kun is my fiancé, in the future I'm going to be called Uzumaki Shiroi." She concluded her statement with a small bow. She also loved the shocked expressions on Sakura's and the genin's faces. The core eyes of the Konohamaru almost jumped out of their sockets. Was this girl going to be Naruto's wife? That implies that in a way, this was their elder sister. Konohamaru called out, "Shiroi. Ne-san." With affection, and the other two people cheered. Sakura's mind, full of book smarts, could not process what she had just heard, so she kept staring at Shiroi and Naruto in disbelief. It just wasn't possible, Naruto with a fiancé? Already? How? What? It? Wha? She felt a knot in her throat as Shiroi turned to face her. Jiraiya was staring at some nearby women while Naruto was too busy chatting animatedly with the genin to notice their transaction, so it was just her and Shiroi. Sakura could not take her eyes off Shiroi's. Visions of her death began to flash through her mind, each more graphic and bloody than the last, and Shiroi's once kind and polite expression had vanished, replaced with a dark look of sadistic glee. Sakura was paralyzed, unable to move, breathe, or even think. The mere act of staring into Shiroi's, no, this monster's, eyes caused fear to consume her. She felt as though her very soul was being split apart, and from the dark humor in Shiroi's eyes, Sakura deduced that, should she have the option and be allowed to escape punishment, she would rearrange her soul in whatever order she most likely preferred, leaving Sakura as either a slave or an eternally broken beyond comprehension. When Shiroi looked away, Sakura let go of a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She prayed to whatever god would listen to never put her in a room by herself with Shiroi again because she didn't think she could handle it, and the mere act of being stared at by her almost sent her into a seizure. Alright, everyone, that's enough. You can play catch up later. After finishing his sneer at the group of women, Jiraiya joked, right now we have to get to Tsunade before she decides to cave in my skull for being late. Oh yeah, he had gotten some awesome research material. Sakura offered to escort them to the Hokage's office, since she needed to report to the Hokage's office anyhow, and they agreed and set off, though Sakura made sure to stay at least 4 feet away from Naruto, since Shiroi would glare at her whenever she got too close. The Konohamaru Corps looked a little disappointed before they brightened up when Naruto promised to talk with them later. They arrived at the Hokage Tower in no time at all, and without bothering to listen to the secretary's insistence that they make an appointment, they hurried inside. After all, they had an appointment for 3 years. They really didn't need to wait. What evil could be so vile and dastardly that even Uchiha Madara whimpered when it was mentioned? Tsunade was engaged in a battle that took precedence because she was up against an enemy that was so evil and vile that even Uchiha Madara whimpered when it was mentioned. The dreaded paperwork was the source of that evil. Tsunade looked at the last piece of paper she needed to complete, and her eyes widened to epic drastically as the document had gotten bigger by at least 10 fold. She sighed with accomplishment as she had gotten at least 500 documents signed, meaning she only had 10 more documents to go. She was so happy that she could perform a tap dance. She scowled at the smiling portrait of Minato and turned to face the other Hokages, realizing that she had even more work ahead of her and that the snickering Anbu was not going to help. Minato, damn you. How on earth did you finish your paperwork so quickly? The smile on Minato's portrait seemed to widen a bit and wink at her, as she angrily exclaimed. Tsunade said, now that's just creepy, before turning away as the stress finally got to her. However, if she had turned around, she would have seen the portrait's smile grow even wider and give a small laugh in response to her plea, before returning to its usual position. Let's just ignore that it ever happened, okay? Tsunade was engrossed in her own hell of paper when there was a knock at her door. She was thinking of a happy, chibi Sunday who was thanking Kami for the break she would be getting. Come in. I'm happy, she exclaimed, and in response the door and the window behind her opened. Sakura then emerged from the door, accompanied by a girl with pink slits in her hair and silvery white hair. Tsunade raised an eyebrow, though, as she saw that the girl was just grinning politely. And Jiraiya came in the window, and her breath caught in her throat when she saw the golden blonde hair. This couldn't be true, could it? But when she saw the whisker marks, she realized that this was Naruto. Her face lit up with a smile, and she shot out of her seat to approach the blonde without any more hesitation. Hello, Oba. Chan. Hello. Tsunade was still as strong as hell, so it makes sense that a chakra-enhanced flick would make him stumble and feel a little pain, Naruto said, a smile appearing on his lips. Tsunade flickered his forehead once she got close enough. You small gaki, don't call me old. Tsunade yelled, giving the blonde a fist shake. Hey? Is Oba-chan scared that people will call her out on her actual age? Naruto joked, a sly smile on his face. Tsunade's eye twitched, and she was about to give her fellow blonde a quick flick to the forehead again when she heard a slight giggle. Interested, she looked over at the silvery white-haired girl who had entered with Sakura, and saw that she was staring at the blonde with warmth and affection that brought to mind her gaze on Dan. Her eyes widened a little before they went back to normal. So you're Shiroi, is that right? Tsunade asked, gazing at the girl with a puzzled expression on her face. Shiroi gave the older woman a kind smile before nodding, but Sakura was secretly smirking a little bit. If her sensei found out that Naruto and Shiroi were engaged, she would beat Naruto until he straightened out and then tell the white-haired girl to go. Yes, Sakura couldn't wait for. Hi, Shiroi. It's good to meet you. You're getting married to the Gaki, huh? Okay, so far so good. A smile appeared on Tsunade's face as she said, I like you already, you have that look in your eyes that kinda reminds me of another woman I knew at some point. When the Anbu learned that Naruto was getting married to the white-haired girl, some of them gasped. Sakura was shocked, saying, What? Couldn't she see what much of a monster she was? Why wasn't her teacher beating Naruto into the ground? Why wasn't she reprimanding him for getting engaged to a girl like this? Shiroi said courteously, "It's a pleasure to meet you, Tsunade." Sama. Hey. Ho. She's also courteous too. Tsunade smiled and gave Naruto a stern look, saying, "You could learn something from her, Gaki." Her fellow blonde just laughed at her. Shiroi laughed silently at Tsunade's now annoyed look at hearing the blonde snicker. Oh, how her Naruto could make her laugh in any circumstance. After witnessing Tsunade's response to Shiroi, Sakura's mind is still trying to recover. Folks, I believe we have broken Sakura, though I'm not sure if that's a good or bad thing. So tell me, Gaki. Specifically, what do you want? Tsunade inquired, getting straight to the point. With a childlike expression, Naruto asked, "Why Oba-chan? I have no idea what yo. After your training trip, you wouldn't visit my office without at least stopping for some ramen. You would wait for a minimum of 1 day. What then is it that you desire?" Tsunade cut him off, calling him out with a smug expression. Following a brief period of frowning, Naruto laughed and smiled, saying, "You know me so well, Ba-chan." He motioned for Shiroi to come stand beside him, and the girl, seeing no reason not to listen to her favorite blonde, moved to stand beside him. When she did, the blonde grinned and took her hand gently in his. "As you can see, Oba-chan, we will both be residing in the same home. Furthermore, I don't think my tiny apartment will accommodate the two of us," the blonde added. Tsunade quickly surmised, "So you want to buy a new house or apartment?" However, in her imagination, a chibi version of herself was joyfully dancing and had plenty of money lying around. After Tsunade's assessment, Naruto nodded. "Alright, so could you let Shiroi and I look through a couple house you might have?" He inquired. "Oh, this house seems nice. Wow, this one is actually impressive. They actually call this a house. That isn't even a homeless shelter," were among the remarks made by Tsunade, as she quietly pulled out a folder titled, "Homes for Sale," and held it out to the younger blonde. Naruto accepted the folder, and soon after that, she and Shiroi were looking through the house together. Tsunade's eye quivered as the comments continued. And continued. Honestly, every time Shiroi spoke, it was to disparage a house or comment on how impressive it was before turning the page and looking at more. Honestly, a lot of those houses were pricey, and she simply ignored them. What were the girl's standards? Tsunade raised an eyebrow, but before she realized that Shiroi was giving her the same amused look, she realized that Naruto seemed to notice her annoyed state and was giving her a funny look. That little. Tsunade inhaled deeply to help her relax, and when she heard Jiraiya and the hidden Anbu laughing, she glared at them. Shiroi and the blonde had finally finished perusing their house a few minutes later. Oba-chan, you have a lot of nice houses. However, Shiroi and I have discovered a home that we would like to buy, Naruto remarked, passing Tsunade a photo of a white, 3-story home with stunning gardens and a balcony on the top floor. The house featured a kitchen, a large living room, an attic, a large basement, and 2 bathrooms on each floor. Tsunade arched an eyebrow at the blonde, pointing out that this was one of their most expensive homes and that nearly every villager had attempted to purchase it, but it was too costly even by shinobi standards. In addition, it was the home that Minato was covertly constructing in case he ever had a large family, not that anyone knew that. After all, she, Jiraiya, Kakashi, and Hiruzen the Sandaime Hokage were the only ones aware of the Yondaime's construction of the house. Gaki, are you sure you want this house? Even though Tsunade intended to give the blonde the house for free anyhow, she still asked. Shiroi said with grace, "Of course we would like to purchase it, Tsunade." Sama. Tsunade smiled a little. "Well, you two are going to be lucky. The message was very clear. It was created by your father, so it's your right. You see, the house was created by the Yondaime, and it was meant to be given to you, Naruto," the woman stated. After a few minutes of humming, Naruto glanced at Shiroi and saw her expectant expression, which said, quite clearly, "Take the house. It would be a perfect opportunity to be close with your parents." The blonde nodded briefly to Tsunade, then smiled again. "All right, Gaki," Tsunade said, reaching into her desk drawer to retrieve a small key. "Take good care of the house, also be prepared for extra attention from the villagers." Tsunade smiled at the two's interaction. It was amazing that they could communicate like that without actually speaking. "Why Ba-chan?" Raised an eyebrow by Naruto. His expression was bewildered as he asked. Shortly after giving him the key, Tsunade said, because practically the entire village has had their eyes on the house. However, they would never be able to afford it, so you may be receiving jealous glances from them. With a slight smirk, Shiroi said, I think we can manage it, Tsunade. Sama. She spoke with confidence and grace. With a slight sly smile, Tsunade addressed the girl with white hair, saying, I'm sure you can. Now get you boyfriend and get out of here, I need to talk with Jiraiya. Both Shiroi and Naruto shrugged and then left the door, walking past a shocked, frozen Sakura that remained motionless. However, before they could continue, Naruto said one final thing that gave Tsunade the urge to slam her head against the desk. He grinned at Tsunade and shut the door, saying, Yo ba. Chan is thanks for the house. The secret to defeating paperwork is shadow clones. Tsunade felt as though everything had stopped, and she wanted to slam her head against the wall and admit how foolish she had been. But she was unable to do so with witnesses present. Later on, she could accomplish that. Sakura. Tsunade exclaimed, staring at her still. Astonished pupil. Sakura blinked in confusion, huh? She was dreaming that Naruto and Sakura were actually getting married. Tsunade addressed her now. Alert pupil, Sakura, get out of here will ya? I need to speak with Jiraiya about something, and you're in the way. Sakura nodded and said, Right, I understand Tsunade. Sama. She then departed, unsure if her dream had been real. Sakura is so unfortunate. She is unable to accept that Naruto is now engaged. Confident that her pupil had left, the voluptuous blonde pivoted to face Jiraiya. Shortly after, she yelled, Now think you can explain to me just how strong Naruto is now. And Kakashi get in here. She didn't have to wait long for the masked Jonin to enter her office when the window opened. He slouched to stand in front of the Hokage's desk and said, Yo. Even so, Tsunade could see a glint of shock in his gaze. It appears he showed up when she announced Naruto was engaged. Jiraiya asked seriously, Before I begin, I have to ask Haim. Could you get rid of your Anbu? With just a single hand gesture, Tsunade brought the Anbu into being, and then they all vanished from the room. Is that all of them? Inquired the depraved sage. Tsunade understood why he was asking because, in addition to Kakashi, her, and the pervert, there was another person in the room. The voluptuous blonde nodded silently. Before he faded away, Jiraiya made a sharp snapping sound. Tsunade and Kakashi turned to see Jiraiya clutching the dead Anbu's neck, its mask bearing the root insignia. The body glowed for a minute and then erupted into flames, destroying the body completely. Jiraiya grunted, Looks like Danzo is getting bolder. Kakashi said, gazing at the deceased root Anbu, It seems so. Tsunade sneered, There are times when all I want to do is kill that warhawk, regardless of the evidence. With a grunt of agreement, Jiraiya turned to face Tsunade again. With a fatherly expression in his eyes, he said, Now about our favorite blonde. Gazing at the toad sage with curiosity, Kakashi remarked, I myself am also curious Jiraiya. Sama. Tsunade yelled impatiently, Just get on with it. For a brief moment, Jiraiya grinned and declared, Naruto has long since surpassed me. His voice was full of pride. Before Kakashi spoke, Tsunade and Kakashi exchanged shocked looks with him. He questioned, You're kidding right, Jiraiya? Sama? I'm not kidding Kakashi. That Gaki has surpassed me. In tactics and strategy he's above your level Kakashi by a large margin if I do say so myself. In ninjutsu he's at least mid level Kage. In genjutsu he's high level genin, but that's understandable given his chakra reserves. His taijutsu is low level Kage and his kenjutsu is high level Kage. He's mastered senjutsu and he has control of 2 tails of the Kyuubi's chakra. The evil sage clarified. All in all, he almost at either Uchiha Madara's level or the Shoden Hokage's level. He said. It would be an understatement to say that Kakashi and Tsunade were both taken aback. The young blonde boy who declared he would always be Hokage was nearly twice as powerful as the 2 greatest shinobi in history. To think he'd progressed this far. Tsunade and Kakashi grinned at it. Tsunade questioned, her smile persisting. So you're saying that instead of genin he should be a jonin? Jiraiya nodded briefly. Tsunade closed her eyes for a few seconds, then snapped them open. Kakashi, once Naruto has finished settling in, I want you to test him in combat in order for to receive jonin rank. I want to see his prowess myself. Tsunade said. With a hint of anticipation, Kakashi curtly replied, I understand Tsunade. Sama. Tsunade nodded in satisfaction before turning back to stare at Jiraiya. She asked inquisitively, now what can you tell me about Shiroi? Glancing at Jiraiya with curiosity, Kakashi wondered about the girl who was ostensibly going to marry his old pupil. The white-haired Sannin said menacingly, I can tell you this, Tsunade. Kakashi. Trying to separate her from Naruto is a death wish. She may seem like a well-mannered, kind, and polite girl. But once you've made her angry, she does a complete personality change. She becomes dark, sadistic, cruel, and most importantly, merciless. Jiraiya gasped. After exchanging quick glances, Kakashi and Tsunade turned to look at the Toad Sage with concern. She can get angry, but when you've truly pissed her off. There was only 2 times in which that happened. The first was when she learned of Naruto's life in the village. Tsunade and Kakashi both stiffened up. When she learned of this, I was certain you could feel her rage from at least 4 miles away. Naruto was able to calm her down, but I could still feel the suppressed rage that was within her. The second time was when Naruto overworked himself in his training. So me and her went to get some supplies. Kakashi and Tsunade noticed that Jiraiya, a civilian, began hitting on her, trying to get her on a date, of course. She politely denied, saying she already had a boyfriend. But people are stubborn, and he made the mistake of insulting Naruto. I can still remember the blank look she had on her face. Then she asked me to go on ahead. I did, but I jumped on a roof to see how the interaction would go. He took a deep breath. I didn't even see it, but 1 second the guy was standing. The next he was on the ground screaming in pain, as Shiroi literally ripped off his arm from his socket. Before I could stop her, she ripped off his other arm, then she crushed them until nothing remained but ashes. When I stopped her, I saw the look in her eyes. Jiraiya's eyes glazed over and he shuddered. The look in her eyes was of a feral rage so hot that it could have made even the Kyuubi whimper in pure fear. Not only that, but there was also a gleam of dark sadistic amusement in there, but rage was the most definite. And the cruel smile on her face spoke volumes. He concluded. Jiraiya began to lean forward. This is a warning that should be taken seriously, Tsunade. Do not make Shiroi truly angry. And pray that the villagers don't do anything stupid. Make no mistake, she is a threat. But only if provoked. He was extremely cautious. While Kakashi just took out his Icha-Icha, Tsunade remarked, we understand, Jiraiya. But Tsunade could tell he was not even looking at the book. Before Tsunade could yell at him, Jiraiya nodded satisfiedly and said, well, it's time for me to perform some research. He then gave a sinister smile and leapt out the window. Kakashi said sluggishly, I should get going as well, Tsunade. Sama. I do have to prepare for my fight with Naruto, do I not? Before turning and leaving the room in silence. With a sigh, Tsunade opened her cabinet and took out a full bottle of sake. She filled a cup for herself, took a sip of the sake, and exhaled a satisfied sigh. She sighed wearily as she peered out the window, surveying the entire village. She prayed and hoped. No, she pleaded with Kami to stop the villagers from acting foolishly. Because she thought the village was already precarious enough. Shiroi observed Naruto eating his bowl of ramen at a steady but still brisk pace while grinning like a child, all while displaying a dazed expression of love and affection. She thought he was adorable because of that innocent smile. She and Naruto went straight to their newly purchased home yesterday after their meeting with the female Hokage. Since their new house was close to the Konoha clan district, they had to walk through the village to get there. The villagers stared at them once more. A few offered cordial waves, while a few of the females regarded Naruto with a hint of lust and licked their lips. They were quickly reminded not to look at Naruto that way after witnessing Shiroi's menacing glare and a brief outburst of murderous intent. Men were staring at Shiroi with lustful gazes and glaring at her like a jealous Naruto. One person even had the audacity to approach Shiroi. But all it took was one glance at Kyuubi's chakra from Naruto combined with pure killing intent to make him pale and almost lose control of his bladder. They unlocked and went inside their new house as soon as they arrived at their new location. Shiroi thought the house was more than spacious enough. The idea that Naruto's own father constructed this enormous house was just breathtaking. He had to have made it in case he was going to have a big family. Naruto's mind was filled with an image of a chibi Ondaime attempting to build this house on his own, failing several times. At the very thought, he snorted. The blonde and his future wife arrived at their new house. Began the process of opening every piece of furniture they had acquired during their travels. Items they owned while touring the countries, including couches, chairs, shelves, cases, a refrigerator, and other items. Following the unsealing of everything, they set to work organizing everything and doing other tasks with the assistance of a few shadow clones. Though Naruto instantly turned pale in fear when Shiroi pulled out a scroll bearing the name, "If dolls, the Kyuubi, if it were possible," also turned pale upon seeing the scroll. The two went straight to Kami and prayed that she would not open the scroll. All the while Altair might have perspired profusely. You might wonder why the two of them were so frightened of a few dolls. When you think about it, the explanation was rather odd, but it was also extremely simple. You see, Shiroi has a habit of doing the following when she's really bored and has nothing to do. Making dolls. I don't mean just any dolls. As they say, these dolls were special. She would start by making her dolls out of a wide range of items she owned before beginning the intricate and challenging process of making the dolls. She would then inject some of her Yuki into the dolls once she was done making them, giving them a startling new lease on life. For life. The small doll that had come to life captivated Kyuubi and Naruto alike. Until it pounced on them at a speed that could only be matched by the most skilled jonins. The doll then tried to strangle the blonde to death by latching onto his face. Not to mention that attempting to wring the damn thing off of him was incredibly challenging. The thing was as strong as a fully grown man. For heaven's sake. Furthermore, it has the Yuki of Shiroi pulsing through it. Yes, you understand the idea. Shiroi's laughter didn't help at all. It took the blonde at least a few minutes to get the thing off. The idea of his container dying had even the Kyuubi in a panic. To a fucking doll. In addition, he would perish if Naruto perished. To Naruto's surprise, the Kyuubi were encouraging the blonde to beat the hell out of the demon doll. Never one to let a man down, Naruto used Senjutsu chakra to help him rip the doll off of him, even though it was a bit excessive. But the doll showed itself to be a formidable foe, escaping the blonde's hold and making its way to his kunai pouch. Naruto exclaimed, "Oh, what the fuck?" The doll chased him around with a happy expression as the Kyuubi agreed with him and he ran around the area screaming like a little girl. While Naruto was playing with her harmless doll, Shiroi was laughing uncontrollably. Somehow, a tree branch snapped and landed squarely atop the doll's head. Never one to miss an opportunity, Naruto snatched up the branch and started banging away at the small doll. All the while saying things like, "Uzumaki Namikaza's Naruto is not someone to mess with. The renowned, you like that? And lastly, my personal fave, motherfucker, who the heck is this? Datbeo." Naturally, as the blonde repeatedly struck the doll with the branch, he would have heard the silent screams of pain from the doll. Tears were even streaming from the doll's eyes. It was really rather pathetic. Hold on. When did dolls start crying? Alright, so this is anime. Everything is conceivable. Regardless, it makes sense that Kyuubi and Naruto would object to any of her dolls being more than 10 feet away from them. Have any of them, in any case, been opened? Fortunately, Shiroi refrained from opening the dolls, as Kyuubi and Naruto expressed gratitude to Kami for on several occasions. Following that, Naruto and Shiroi promptly finished arranging their furnishings and headed straight to bed. The following morning, they rose, showered together, put on clothes, and ate pancakes, eggs, bacon, and orange juice for breakfast. Orange juice, With nothing to do afterward, Shiroi requested a tour of the entire village. Given his desire to show his partner around his house, Naruto gladly obliged and gave her a tour of the village as soon as he could. He took her to see the Memorial Stone, the Hokage Mountain, and a few of the village's well-known eateries. But Shiroi soon forgot about the village and her interest in it. Not because she didn't enjoy the village, exactly. Simply put, she was not at all interested in finding out more about the location that had hurt her partner both physically and mentally. She was, as it were, impartial toward the village. But if the village did something that she thought would endanger Naruto, then she would completely destroy them. After observing Shiroi lose interest in Konoha, Naruto considered what he could show her to pique her curiosity at least a little. However, he was surprised to see that it was already noon when he looked up. Coincidentally, they found themselves in front of Ichiraku's ramen. The blonde declared that it was ramen time right away, and took Shiroi's hand, appearing to teleport him straight in the direction of the store. The villagers were taken aback by that since it brought to mind the yellow flash. However, they disregarded the idea that Naruto was the Yondaime's son. It was simply not feasible. Correct? Naruto greeted the two shop owners loudly as soon as they walked inside. Ichiraku Tuchi, her father, and Ichiraku Ayame. After such a long time, both Ichirakus were delighted to see the blonde and eagerly returned her greeting. Even though the Ichirakus were shocked to hear that Shiroi and Naruto were engaged, they were still happy for the blonde and showed it by getting them both a bowl of ramen on the house. The blonde had introduced Shiroi to the two of them. Though her tone was only amused, Shiroi reprimanded Naruto. "Kun, you slow down a little more." Naruto whimpered, turning to face Shiroi with the dreaded puppy eyes and saying, "B." "But Shiroi. Chan. It's ramen." Shiroi gave her blonde lover a blank stare before giving him a small shake of her head. She gave the blonde a funny look when she saw him freeze. "And it will still be there, so you don't have to eat so fast. And besides, don't you want to savor it?" she asked. The blonde exclaimed loudly, "Shiroi. Chan. You are absolutely right. Ramen like this should be savored." Before starting to eat his ramen much more slowly. With a smile, Shiroi returned her attention to her bowl of ramen. Seeing the looks of shock on her father's and Ayame's faces, she arched an eyebrow. "Is there a problem?" inquired she. Tucci said, his brain too stunned to process what he was seeing. Impossible. You managed to get Naruto to slow down on eating ramen. How? Before speaking in a somewhat superior tone, Shiroi arched a delicate eyebrow. "Whatever do you mean, Ichiraku? San?" While taking a classy bite out of her own noodles, she asked. "Well, me and too. San have been trying to get Naruto to slow down on his eating habits, but we could never get him to," Ayame said, pausing while her father continued to look shocked. "We were really frustrated because we couldn't figure out how to teach him manners," Ayame said. When this Shiroi said, "Well, I'm proud to say that I know how Naruto thinks," she did not try to hide the superior tone in her voice. Ayame noticed the pride and a hint of arrogance in the girl's tone and twitched slightly at her slight arrogance. As a result, it would make this, that I would know what it takes for the blonde to listen. Even so, Naruto's short attention span has made it difficult to teach him new things, so Ayame answered with a tone that hinted at difficulty. Shiroi's eyes narrowed a little. "Well, I can guarantee that for someone like me." Even though Naruto was a bit of a brute back then, it was remarkably easy to teach him some manners, the silvery white-haired girl replied, raising her chin in pride. "Oh, is that accurate? Well, I imagine it must have been a bit difficult for you," Ayame said. "Considering that when I tried to teach Naruto, he never really paid attention to me," she said. "You weren't doing a very good job, that much is clear." Shiroi said, "After all, he was paying attention to me while I was teaching him, more than I could have ever imagined." While Shiroi and Ayame were arguing, Naruto, Tucci, Kyuubi, and even Altair were all watching and quickly became uncomfortable. The two were acting so much like rivals that it was almost awkward. "Naruto. Is your girlfriend not afraid to express her opinions? Damn, she had ears," Tucci remarked, sending shivers down his spine at her acerbic glance. "Yes. However, that's among my favorite aspects of Shiroi. Chan, the kind spoken blonde remarked, causing Shiroi, who was paying close attention with her keen hearing, to blush a little. An Anbu appeared and bowed towards Naruto before any of their conversations, or arguments, could continue, capturing the attention of Shiroi, the blonde, and everyone else. Before vanishing in a puff of leaves, the Anbu said, "Naruto. San, Hokage. Sama wishes for you to be in training ground 12 in exactly 4 minutes. Though they were all a little perplexed as to why Tsunade would want to see the blonde, they decided not to think about it further and concentrated on getting whatever they were doing done. After finishing their ramen, Shiroi and Naruto said goodbye to the Ichiraku, and the blonde and his fiancée hurriedly headed towards training ground 12, all the while wondering what Tsunade desired. But little did either of them know that Naruto would soon have to face an old friend and teacher. It was finally time for Hitaki Kakashi to reveal just how much his former has grown, and it was also time for Naruto's Jonin test. The fight between Kakashi and Naruto was about to begin. When Naruto and Shiroi arrived at training ground 12, they saw Tsunade and Jiraiya standing in the center of the field with expressionless expressions on their faces. After exchanging glances with Shiroi, Naruto and the other Sannin moved to face the two legendary Sannins. The female Sannin was a Hokage, and stood there for a strangely long moment before Naruto spoke. "Greetings, Tsunade. Bon. For what purpose are we here?" Shiroi just managed to stare at them curiously as the blonde asked, raising an eyebrow in confusion. "Naruto." Tsunade said, "You will soon be taking a test to see if you are proficient enough to become a Jonin." "Well, what's the test, Ba? Chan?" Naruto asked, a grin spreading across his features as Shiroi blinked owlishly. But before Tsunade could say anything, the blonde's question was answered by a different voice. "Naruto, this is your test. Is to fight me to death." Naruto and Shiroi both turned around, and lo and behold, the blonde was greeted by the sight of his former teacher, Kakashi, who was not dressed in the traditional Jonin garb. His stance and movements conveyed that he was going to take this fight seriously. Lastly, he was not reading his usual Icha book. Instead, the masked Jonin now wore a full black bodysuit complete with his mask. He wore Anbu issue armor, complete with a tanto strapped to his back. "Sensei Kakashi?" Once Naruto said that, a huge, almost savage smile burst onto his face. "You're correct, Naruto. To get your Jonin rank, you must overcome Kakashi." Tsunade exclaimed, looking at both of her shinobi with narrowed eyes. "This match will begin shortly after I say it does, and the rules are simple." The female Hokage declared, "There are none." "I get it, Ba Chan." With a crack of his knuckles and neck, Naruto declared. Without taking his eyes off the blonde, Kakashi said, "I understand as well, Tsunade." "Sama. Excellent. Start." Shiroi lingered a moment longer, silently wishing the older blonde luck, before she too blurred out of sight. The older blonde exclaimed before she and Jiraiya blurred out of sight. With both Naruto and Kakashi staring each other down, the atmosphere was tense and heavy. For Kakashi, this was his chance to finally see just how powerful his former student truly was, and whether or not his student had surpassed him. This was Naruto's opportunity to demonstrate to Kakashi how much he had changed and matured since his departure all those years ago, and to demonstrate to Kakashi that he was no longer a child. How quickly does time fly by? What? Not Naruto? When was the last time we sparred like this? You were still my student, thought Kakashi. While Kakashi's visible eye narrowed, Naruto just remained silent and slowly moved his hands to grip his robes before slowly moving his hand forwards towards his headband. With his robes taken off, Naruto showed off his dark orange mesh shirt, black pants, black boots, and Altair sheathed by his side. The blonde threw his robes aside with reckless abandon, tightening the sash around his waist and ensuring Altair remained securely at his side. With a lift of his headband, Kakashi revealed his very own Sharingan, the very thing that gave him the nickname Sharingan no Kakashi and allowed him to copy over 1,000 techniques. Kakashi's eyes narrowed before he suddenly twisted his body and allowed the blonde to move forward, then the masked Jonin tried to kick the blonde in the back. Both Kakashi and Naruto stared at each other for a single moment before they suddenly blurred. A shock was felt in the middle of the field as both Naruto and Kakashi reappeared, their fists firmly pressed against each other trying to overpower the other. But the blonde quickly changed direction, blocking Kakashi's oncoming kick with his forearm. The blonde then tightened his grip on the Jonin's leg, sending his other hand flying forward to his chest, demonstrating that he would be a worthy opponent. But he showed that he was worthy of the title of Elite Jonin by bending his whole body back and letting the blonde's hand pass over him. Then, he kicked himself off the ground and launched a chakra enhanced kick in the direction of the blonde who had a firm hold on his hand. The blonde narrowed his eyes, released the Jonin's leg, and leapt back a few feet, missing Kakashi's trap in the process. A number of the shadow clones that Kakashi had previously made shot out, grabbing hold of the blonde in quick succession. One grabbed his legs, another his left arm, a third his other arm, and a fourth trapped him in a fell Nelson. The blonde was not having any of that, and he quickly used his wind field to destroy the masked Jonin's clones. The blonde was pleased to note the winding of Kakashi's eyes, before the blonde charged in with his elbow already prepared to smash against the Jonin's face. Naruto sighed in frustration before he saw Kakashi charging in a strike. The blonde seized the Jonin by the bodysuit's fabric before he could even attempt to gain some breathing room, causing some of the Jonin's bones to creak due to the force of the elbow strike. Kakashi's eyes widened as he realized how quickly he misjudged Naruto's speed and as a result did not have time to prepare for a substitution. But the blonde was far from done, using his wind field to dramatically increase his speed, and with a chakra-enhanced punch sent the Jonin flying several meters away. He appeared to teleport directly to Kakashi's location, then proceeded to kick the Jonin mercilessly for a few moments. He then finished with a final kick that was enhanced by chakra, which sent Kakashi hurtling across the field and into a boulder. The masked Jonin glared at his former student before blurring through several hand seals. The Jonin coughed as he forced himself out of the now human-sized hole in the boulder. Grand Fireball. Fire style. Then a huge ball of fire erupted from the Jonin's mouth, heading in the direction of the blonde. Naruto narrowed his eyes and blinked through multiple hand seals. Water Phoenix. A new water style. The blonde cried out, and before Kakashi could even see, water from the atmosphere started to gather around her. It didn't take long for the blonde to take shape and grow into a massive, beautiful phoenix, which screamed loudly before flying toward the masked Jonin's fireball. The two moves collided, then exploded outward in a thick mist that Kakashi cautiously listened to, since this mist would prove to be quite helpful to his fair pupil. When the mist cleared, he could see his blonde student quietly observing him, but much to his surprise, the mist was dissipating far faster than he had ever expected. Moreover, now that the Jonin was actually paying more attention to the blonde with his Sharingan eye, he could see wind natured chakra coating the area around the blonde. Kakashi then realized that the mist was dissipating more quickly than usual and that the earlier clones he had destroyed were caused by this apparent wind field. The blonde student reached for the blade sheathed at his side, drawing the masked Jonin's attention away from his thoughts. When the blonde removed the blade, Kakashi was mesmerized by its beauty. A smooth sliver blade with eagle wings serving as the handguard and an eagle's head serving as the pommel, it appeared strong enough to cut through even the hardest metals. When Naruto started speaking, Kakashi's ears perked up in curiosity. All of the training I ever had. Naruto said. All of the techniques I ever learned. Every battle I have ever engaged in. Were all extremely thrilling. Kakashi's gaze dilated. What was his former pupil trying to convey? But none of it gets me more hyppeneous than when I draw Altair. The former ANBU's eyes widened, and he barely had time to draw his Tonto to block the blonde's vertical strike. The Tonto in his clashed with the blonde's blade, and much to Kakashi's surprise, his Tonto started to creak and crack as it clashed with the blonde's blade. The blonde exclaimed, before he suddenly rocketed from his position. The blonde's sword and Kakashi's Tonto clashed again before it broke, much to Kakashi's dismay. He had to jump back to avoid having his chest slashed open, but he was a little too late and ended up with a deep gash on his right arm. The masked Jonin focused his Sharingan eye onto the blonde's sword, and much to his surprise, he discovered the blade was not only covered with wind chakra, but also the Kyuubi's chakra. Kakashi immediately channeled Chikara into the wound to stop it from bleeding, but much to his shock, it continued to bleed. The blonde wasn't using the Kyuubi's chakra at all, so that wasn't possible. Unless the blade itself held some of the Kyuubi's chakra. But before Kakashi could even consider that theory, the blonde lunged at the masked Jonin and tried stabbing him with Altair. The Jonin realized that he could not allow the blonde to stab him with that sword, so he used all of his strength and effort to avoid the majority of the blonde's blows. The masked Jonin panted as he took in his surroundings. He was running low on chakra. He had a deep gash to his arm that will somewhat stop him from weaving hand signs in the speed he wanted. He was wounded all over, and his opponent. However, he could not dodge them all, and as a result, he received several cuts and slashes. Then, Kakashi realized with a start that he had not even managed to inflict a single scratch on his opponent. The blonde appeared to be in good health. In fact, he appeared to be strolling through a park. But wait, Kakashi was still using that tactic. Naruto. I mean, did you know that my sensei was the Undaime? Kakashi asked, sending energy into his left hand through chakra. With a single raised eyebrow, Naruto said, yeah, I knew my two. San was your sensei. The blonde put Altair back in its sheath and gave the blade a pat on the pommel for a job well done, causing the blade to pulse with satisfaction. For a brief moment, Kakashi's eyes widened in shock. Had the blonde discovered that his sensei was actually his son? If so, did that mean Naruto now knew that he was his god brother? Kakashi shook his head slightly. No, he hadn't done enough to support and shield the blonde when he was younger. He didn't deserve the distinction of being Naruto's god brother. Rather, Kakashi decided to concentrate on the final move used in this battle. Prior to Minato Sensei's demise. He gave me one last jutsu lesson, Kakashi said, holding up his left hand to reveal a Rasengan spinning quickly. Kakashi raised an eyebrow, wondering if he had just broken Naruto. Naruto's eyes widened for a moment before he laughed, and then his laughter turned into full blown laughter. Kakashi. Sensei. I didn't know the Rasengan could be used. Sincerely, I kind of hoped you did. The blonde woman cried out. Oh? And why is Naruto there? Questioned the masked Jonin. The blonde said, because now I can test this, against an ordinary Rasengan. Just then, a whiter Rasengan with tiny wind blades fluttering about it materialized in his hand. This was the Rasengan wind style. Kakashi's shocked eyes grew wide. Naruto. Is it so? The masked Jonin began to fade away. Indeed. The blonde affirmed, this is the Rasengan in its finished form. The blonde couldn't see it, but a smile lit the Jonin's face. In Kakashi's eyes, his sensei materialized as a ghostly figure behind him, grinning and saying, let's finish this, Naruto. Ultimately, I have to prepare to congratulate you when you win, don't I? With a faint smile spreading across his face, Kakashi spoke. Indeed, Kakashi. Sensei. As soon as the two charged at each other, Naruto let out a cry, and Kakashi couldn't help but smile when his own Rasengan was easily destroyed by Naruto's. As he held his now damaged hand, the masked Jonin merrily thought, Naruto. You have truly grown. I am proud to have been your sensei. So thank you, Naruto. Thank you. For giving me the chance to know you. For all the good times we shared. Naruto, you prevail. You are not a genin anymore. That makes you a fully ranked Jonin. Do us proud, Naruto. Kakashi happily said. Naruto grinned, an embarrassed blush on his face at the praise. However, he smiled brightly when Shiroi flung herself at the blonde and trapped him in an iron hug. Naruto. Kun. That fight was incredible. She cried out, caressing his face with her cheek, causing the blonde to purr. And the Kyuubi was beaming like a crazy person who had just realized the world was all his to possess. In the meantime, Kakashi approached the smiling Toad Sannin in the female Hokage, saying, Tsunade. Sama. Jiraiya. Sama, he said hello. Before saying, Jiraiya grinned at Kakashi and said, so what do you two think? Even though he already knew, he asked. In my opinion, Naruto is deserving of the title of Jonin. He has demonstrated exceptional skills as a shinobi, making him highly valuable in the field, Kakashi speculated, wearing his signature grin. Tsunade smiled. No matter what you would have said, Kakashi, I have granted him the rank of Jonin. Though Jiraiya and Kakashi both gave a perverted giggle at the sight of Shiroi kissing Naruto, the female Hokage said, laughing. Life was good, wasn't it, just before Tsunade hit them both in the head? With a small wince, Kakashi took a seat in one of the numerous chairs in the Jonin lounge. Even though Tsunade's assistance helped him feel a great deal better after he emerged from his battle mode, as he liked to refer to it, the injuries he sustained in his fight with Naruto remained. Following his fight with Naruto, Kakashi went straight to bed to recover from his injuries. Who would have imagined that the blonde would rise to such prominence so quickly? Kakashi grinned with pride at that. That is, until he came to the realization that he had no right to feel any pride he might be experiencing right now. It's true that he only taught the blonde the tree-walking exercise, but that was back when they were all completely out of their league. As it would be at least 10 times easier, Kakashi thought that the person with the most training should begin training first. But that came at a heavy price. His inaction and laziness caused his team, Team 7, to gradually disintegrate. Sasuke's rage at losing to his brother was the initial cause of it. Then Sasuke started using Naruto as a benchmark and became irritated when he noticed how much the blonde was improving. Sasuke became envious of the blonde as a result, and his rage only grew. Up until he lost it and issued Naruto a duel challenge. Sasuke became angrier when he realized how much damage the Rasengan could do and how superior it was to his Chidori. However, Kakashi ignored it all the time. He had simply assumed that Sasuke needed a way to let off steam and had left. He did speak with Jiraiya briefly regarding teaching Naruto the Rasengan. But as time went on, he realized that, despite having taught Sasuke the Chidori, he was acting hypocritically. When Kakashi finally realized why Team 7 failed, it was like a reality bitch slapping him in the face. Was a result of his own sloth. Considering it at this moment, it doesn't seem like he taught them anything at all. And because Sasuke was easier to teach, he spent the majority of his time with him, teaching whatever he could. Kakashi laughed sadly. Anko was accurate. In all honesty, he was not a very good teacher. His team disintegrated due to his own habits and laziness. He had assumed that it would be easy for him because his teacher made teaching seem so simple. But it was harder than he had thought. Walking a tree with his students while on a C rank mission that became an A rank. At that moment, what was he thinking? Kakashi was not sure if he should feel embarrassed about himself or relieved that his team had made it through the ordeal. He was positive that Minato was currently rolling in his grave, most likely threatening to give him a lifetime of training when he joined him in the afterlife. Kakashi laughed melancholily, wondering, what would his sensei think of his indolence? The sound of the Jonin lounge door opening startled him out of his reverie as Sarutobi Asuma, the Sandaime Hokage's son, stepped inside. Asuma's lover, Yuhi Kurenai, was clearly visible. Kakashi's self-described rival, Might Guy. And lastly Konoha's snake mistress, Mitarashi Anko, and her finest interrogator, Morono Ibiki. While Anko and Ibiki were speaking with menacing expressions on their faces, Kurenai and Asuma were conversing in hushed tones. It appears they have discovered a new toy to play with, as Kakashi shuddered. Kakashi felt sorry for the helpless idiot who was in their care. Kakashi tried his hardest to hide from his fellow Jonin. There was no way he was going to reveal his condition to them. He prayed to Kami that they wouldn't notice him because they would never let him live it down. But it appears that Kami chose to have some fun with the masked Jonin because Guy saw him right away. Guy blurred towards his eternal rival, saying, "Yash Kakashi, my eternal rival. How are your flames of youth today?" Now that everyone was focused on Kakashi and Guy, the poor masked Jonin was crushed to death as the green spandex wearing Jonin picked up Kakashi and gave him a manly hug. "Help me, Kami. Sama. He's going to spread his youthful flames to me. It's happening already, damn it." Kakashi thought, at once filled with horror and despair. Upon witnessing Kakashi's horrified expression, the other Jonin laughed and whispered among themselves. Kakashi winced in pain as Guy stopped hugging his eternal rival and gave him a firm pat on the back, the same spot where Naruto had slammed him into a boulder the day before. Asuma noticed Kakashi flinch and asked, "Kakashi, is something wrong?" As soon as Asuma finished speaking, all of the Jonin in the room gave Kakashi a closer look and realized how injured he was. Anko raised an eyebrow and said, "Holy shit, Kakashi. The fuck happened to you?" Kakashi let out a weary sigh. He had intended to keep the details of his match with Naruto a secret, but now, well, what could go wrong? As Kakashi started explaining his match with the one and only Uzumaki Naruto, the other Jonin's eyes grew progressively wider. "Well, it's like this," Kakashi said. A blank face mask wearing Enbu with the root insignia slowly made his way down the corridor deep within Konoha's subterranean. A few moments later, he entered a large room that had a massive platform in the center of it. At least 3 walkways were present, and in the middle stood an elderly person who was heavily bandaged. The root Anbu strode quickly over to his master and bowed down to him. The root Anbu said, "Danzo. Sama. I return to inform you of the outcome of the match between Hitaki Kakashi and Uzumaki Naruto, without displaying any emotion at all. One of the elders of Konoha and Sarutobi Hiruzen's rival, Shimura Danzo, opened his icy, wary eyes and motioned for his root ninja to continue. Hitaki Kakashi has found that Uzumaki Naruto, the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune, is a formidable opponent. He possessed exceptional taijutsu, comparable to that of Might Guy of the Leaf. Based on what I've observed, he only used 2 jutsus, but his ninjutsu has proven to be quite potent. The root Anbu paused to give Danzo time to process the information he had been given, and then continued at his nod. He can draw water from the atmosphere like the Nidaime Hokage, and it appears he has created a new version Rasengan, the jutsu created by the Yondaime Hokage. Naruto pulled his blade from its sheath when Uzumaki pulled it. In their Kenjutsu duel with Hitaki Kakashi, he prevailed. According to what I've seen, Kyuubi Jinchuriki has developed into a formidable and fearsome shinobi who is capable of taking down Hitaki Kakashi at any time. The root Anbu concluded. What do you mean by that? Danzo asked, giving his curiosity a little more indulgence as he slowly raised an eyebrow. The elder with bandages inquired. Uzumaki Naruto was obviously reserving most of his strength for when he faced Hitaki Kakashi. The root Anbu clarified, my observations indicate that the Kyuubi Jinchuriki should be at least cage level, as Hitaki Kakashi never touched the Kyuubi Jinchuriki during the battle. Danzo hummed to himself for a moment, stunned at the thought that the Kyuubi Jinchuriki would grow so strong in such a short period of time. After all, the Jinchuriki's lineage was that of the formidable and dangerous Uzumaki clan, as well as the one and only Namikaze Minato, the greatest shinobi of his generation. It was clear that the Jinchuriki's abilities were being stunted during his time in the academy. In fact, Danzo was positive that the Jinchuriki, rather than the Uchiha brat, would have won Rookie of the Year if he had received proper training. Since Homura and Kaharu made sure the brat had everything he needed on a silver platter, a bad decision on their part, Danzo never really liked the Uchiha brat and his attitude. Even so, Danzo was aware that the Jinchuriki would become a formidable shinobi if he was given the right instruction. Thus, when Kakashi took on the role of the Jinchuriki's teacher, Danzo had hoped the blonde would also grow strong so he could ask the blonde about joining Root when he reached a remarkable level. But when the third round of the Chunin exams was about to begin, he resolved to talk to the blonde about giving him training and maybe waiving his trust in Hiruzen. But to his dismay, Jiraiya got to the Jinchuriki first. Kakashi's laziness and his habits didn't actually serve any purpose in training the blonde. Furthermore, Danzo was aware that the blonde's chances of being accepted into Root were minimal as she trained under Jiraiya. Danzo, who are you? Unintentionally jolting Danzo out of his reverie, the Root Anbu inquired in a questioning tone. Dismissed. Danzo gave the order, and the Root Anbu vanished from existence almost immediately after. Even though there was little chance of success, Danzo's eyes narrowed as he considered how to win the Kyuubi Jinchuriki over to his cause. After all, anything was better than nothing. Even though Danzo knew he should have abducted the blonde when he was a baby and put the blame on another shinobi village, he still cursed Hiruzen over in his mind for not giving him the Kyuubi Jinchuriki sooner. This would require careful planning, Danzo sighed. With a sigh of frustration, Gaara sighed through yet another sheet of paperwork, wondering why other cages made such a big deal out of it, though since he's never slept a day in his life, paperwork must come naturally to him. He was able to keep signing these documents the entire night long. He frowned again, seeing another funding request from a villager who wanted to start a new planting business in the village. These requests had been coming in for a few days, each villager wanting to start a new business but needing the right kind of funding. Money was tight in the desert, so Gaara sighed as he marked it as declined. It was true that their daimyo has been returning missions since the whole Konoha invasion debacle, but that didn't make up for the years of funding they lost as a result of their daimyo actions, and as of right now, Suna was still trying to make up for the money they lost during the invasion. As a result, the majority of the funds were used to support the village as a whole because they lacked the funds to launch new enterprises until they did. Even though the village's Jonin and Shunin teams were coming in and out of the village going on high-ranking missions, bringing back an impressive sum of money, it still wasn't enough to help them recover financially, and at the rate they were going it would take at least several more months. A thin hand had already taken it up and started to look at it as it moved to pick up another sheet. A female voice complained, clearly wearing a pout, Gaara. Kun, if you keep working in this office doing this paperwork I'm gonna think you don't want to spend time with me. Gazing at the woman in front of him, Gaara allowed a tiny smile to creep onto his face. She had long, black hair that fell smoothly down her back like a smooth river, curled eyelashes, and orange eyes with a slightly slitted pupil. She also had a heart-shaped face, a small nose and mouth, as well as several bangs that swayed messily but cutely into her eyes. She wore a short sword sheathed at her side, black pants with a red sash tying them together, black sandals with dark blue socks, a black shirt with a dark blue unzipped jacket over it, and finally, several pouches held together around her waist. But it was her enormous bat-like wings on her back and her slightly curved nails that would really draw attention. Yui was the name of this female succubus. Before he became the case cage of Suna, Gaara had encountered her during one of his assignments. Upon discovering her severely injured, he assisted her and nursed her wounds until they healed out of curiosity and compassion. She awoke during the time he was tending to her injuries, and she watched with curiosity as Gaara did so. When Gaara finished, she asked why he had helped her and treated her injuries given that she was a succubus, to which Gaara simply replied that he would accept the opportunity to save anyone, regardless of who they were, what their background was, or their race. After all, Gaara firmly believed in second chances. After hearing Gaara's response, something changed in Yui, and she began to spend time with her. The people of Suna were initially hesitant to accept the female succubus because they didn't believe her to be as violent and bloodthirsty as they had assumed. The villagers eventually grew accustomed to her continual presence and began to treat her the same as any other villager. Gaara's siblings cruelly teased him about the fact that he was nearly always seen with Yui, despite the fact that Gaara enjoyed their time together. Gaara merely blinked, saying he wasn't that experienced with relationships and that she might have to get used to the fact that he might get confused on several things surrounding relationships. Yui, on the other hand, waved him off and said it was no problem to her. Yui was slowly but surely falling for the Ichibi Jinchuriki, and after a year she confessed her love for the redhead. Much to the chagrin of Gaara's new fangirls, the two have gone on numerous dates since then. Yui greeted Gaara as soon as he was promoted to case cage, yelling with excitement that it was incredible that he had such a position. Due to the fact that there had not been a case cage for at least 2.5 years, they had spent the majority of their time in the office since then. Nevertheless, Gaara and Yui's combined efforts allowed them to significantly reduce the amount of paperwork. Yui spent her time assisting Gaara with marking, filing, organizing, and transferring the paperwork. When Gaara once thanked her for her assistance, Yui waved him off, expressing her satisfaction with helping him with his workload. "I'm sorry if I'm spending too much time at the office, but I thought you were asleep, or were you just acting that way to have a little vacation?" With a playful gleam in his eyes, Gaara inquired. Yui gave her boyfriend a pout before giving him a lighthearted arm slap. "Oh, shut up. You act as though I haven't seen you attempting to pretend to be ill in order to avoid having to deal with the paperwork for at least a few hours," she growled, amused at the shocked look on her face. Despite Yui's slight snort at Gaara's apparent attempt to hide his tracks, Gaara quickly regained his composure and said, "I have no idea of what you speak of, Yui. However, she won't let him get away with it so easily." "Oh my goodness, what about the day you pretended to be having a heart attack following your third day as case cage?" she questioned, raising an eyebrow while pretending to be both confused and amused. Gaara gave the succubus a playful glare after choking a little on his own spit. "What's on the form you holding? Is this another funding request?" Gaara inquired, hoping to shift the conversation. Gaara would always change the subject when he knew he couldn't win an argument with Yui in order to preserve some of his pride. Yui winked playfully, knowing she had won that little argument. No, it wasn't an appeal for money. He asked a noble gentleman on a mission to escort him back to his homestead. "I'm going back to the land of springs," she replied. Gaara nodded and said, "I take you approved it then." Yui huffed playfully at him, saying, "Of course. Man, we've been in this office for what? I understand full well that Suna needs whatever funds we can get our hands on," she said, flicking her hair to ensure Gaara could see her behind her head before moving to the window. 2 whole days? She inquired inanely. Idly wondering what he was going to have for dinner tonight, Gaara nodded as he proceeded to go through all of the papers on his desk. He honestly didn't know why all the other cages complained about this, but he could admit it does get rather boring rather quickly after a while. He'll give it some more thought later. Even though Yui had only been living in the desert for a short while, she knew that large white birds like that did not belong in a desert like this, so she narrowed her eyes as the strange bird entered her field of vision. "Hi, Gaara?" Gaara stopped going through his paperwork when he heard the serious, probing tone in Yui's voice. Instead, he focused on Yui, who was maintaining a steely stare on a large white bird. "Alright, Yui?" Gaara questioned, casting a serious and inquiring glance at Yui. "Are big white birds meant to be present in the desert? May I ask?" Yui inquired. With a non-existent eyebrow raise, Gaara got up from his chair and walked to the window, where he peered up at the sky and saw the big white bird Yui was referring to. His eyes narrowed because he had spent his entire life in the desert and knew that kind of bird did not exist there. Gaara gave an order, his voice belying no emotion. "Yui, find Kankuro and Baki, and tell them that all shinobi are demobilized and that their main concern is the safety of civilians." After giving Gaara a sidelong glance and wondering why she would follow such an order, Yui nodded. Her wings then began to flap multiple times before she took to the air and flew out the window. Narrowing his eyes, Gaara saw a barely discernible cloaked figure in the night sky of the desert. In the meantime, he calmly and leisurely walked to the balcony of his office, and he gave the large white flying bird a sharp and impassive glare. The sand from all over the village slowly started to gather around the young cage. As soon as the redhead had enough, he threw it at the big white bird, and he watched as it dodged his sand with reflexes that weren't even typical for a bird of its size. His eyes narrowed again, and he threw his sand behind the bird, which appeared to be carrying someone. The bird dodged again, but this time Gaara was prepared, and he clenched his fist. More sand appeared out of nowhere, encircling the bird. Again Gaara clenched his fist. But the bird ducked at the last moment, safely remaining in the air. The figure falling from the bird's position would fare better. As expected, the cloaked figure landed in a kneeling position, almost as if it were pleading to be spared, but Gaara noticed the tense frame the figure held, proving to Gaara that this person wasn't going to be around anytime soon. The figure flipped over in midair so that as he landed he could land in a kneeling position. Gaara was finally able to get a clear view of his opponent as the cloaked figure stood. His opponent carried a pouch on his right side, which Gaara didn't know what it contained. His opponent had long blonde hair tied in a high ponytail. A large bang partially covered and framed his left eye. Gaara was able to catch a glimpse of a metal contraption on his opponent's left eye before his hair covered it away. But it was his opponent's black cloak with red clouds with a white outline that truly grabbed his attention. Gaara's eyes narrowed, and a scowl appeared on his face. Akatsuki is starting to take action. Gaara noticed that his sand was swirling a little and gave it a quick glance. Then, the sand stopped swirling but twitched in a menacing way toward the member of the Akatsuki who was standing. Gaara knew why his sand was swirling. The Ichibi inside of him was clamoring for the Akatsuki's blood. Gaara's focus was diverted from his quivering sand by the Akatsuki member's words. Yar. I didn't anticipate being attacked right away. Please explain how you knew to attack me. Questioned the blonde Akatsuki member. With an expression of impassivity and stoicism, Gaara replied, "There are no birds like that in this desert." The member of Akatsuki grinned and said, "I guess that's true to some extent." The blonde gave the Ichibi Jinchuriki another sly smile and said, "Man, what bother, I was kinda hoping to catch you off guard, but I guess that's a bust, Where are my manners? I'm Deidara, better known as the crazy bomber in the bingo book." Deidara greeted the impassive cage with a fictitious bow. Gaara remarked, squinting his eyes at his rival, Subaku no Gaara. For a brief moment, Deidara scowled before his smile returned. "You're not much of a conversationalist, are you? However, that is unimportant. It matters that you are taking the convenient route and accompanying me. Or the difficult way. And kindly. Do make the difficult decision," Deidara said after giving it some thought. Deidara leapt directly onto his floating bird, just before it took off at blinding speeds. Gaara, however, wasn't planning on letting the Akatsuki member go so easily, so he controlled the sand surrounding him and made it chase the blonde bomber. That was Gaara's only response, a swirl of sand speeding straight towards the Akatsuki member. Deidara's bird curved, quickly avoiding most of the buildings it was about to fly into, and he grinned darkly as the snad chased him down. He glanced past a couple of Suna shinobi and a strange girl with bat like wings on her back, then turned back to the sand chasing him down. Looking down, he saw that his hands were still working to form his explosive clay. Damn, I need more time, Deidara thought to himself. Breaking free from his reverie, he watched as Gaara launched another wave of sand at Deidara, but this time, the blonde defiantly started to sidestep every single one of the assaulting sand streams that were aimed directly at him. Experiencing a sudden wave of frustration, Gaara realized that the Akatsuki member was proving his sand's supposed inescapability to be true. In his entire life, Gaara had only faced two other opponents that his sand had never been able to capture: Uchiha Sasuke, the last member of the Uchiha clan, and the past, loyal, Uchiha of Konoha. Though the young Kazekage thought the second person was a very good friend and someone Gaara respected greatly, it was concerning to consider that there might be other shinobi out there that could avoid his sand. Gaara was startled out of his reverie when he saw the blonde Akatsuki member smirking. He narrowed his eyes and silently made several hand motions, sending his sand speeding straight at the member. The blonde seemed to smirk even more, so he immediately gave his bird the order to run to the left. Nevertheless, Gaara was bracing himself for that, and then more sand shot up out of the ground, encircling the blonde, who grimaced a little, and Gaara slowly clenched his fist to crush her. But then another smirk appeared on the blonde's face, saying, "It's too late, Kazekage." Sama, with a mocking tone. "My clay is finally ready." Deidara started. The blonde concluded with a sly smile. His eyes narrowed, and though he didn't give it much thought, Gaara silently gave the order for his sand to start crushing the blonde. Suddenly, the blonde threw a handful of tiny clay made spiders, and the young Kazekage raised a non-existent eyebrow, but his eyes widened at what followed. "The arts are exploding. Katu." With great delight, Deidara exclaimed. Abruptly, the spiders that had been clinging to Gaara's sand burst forth, scattering sand particles all over the place and forming a thick cloud of smoke. Gaara manipulated the sand inside his gourd to give himself a proper defense and to lift him the balcony and to the sky, and his eyes widened when more clay animals, like grasshoppers, spiders, cockroaches, and beetles, came flying right at his perch on the balcony out of the smoke. He didn't need any more paperwork on collateral damage. He already had enough to deal with. With an impassive glare from Gaara, Deidara smirked as his opponent appeared to be floating inside a large ball of sand in the middle of the sky, with a large portion of the ball missing its sand. "So that's the Ichibi Jinchuriki's absolute defense, huh?" The blonde thought to herself. Deidara, acting solely on instinct, dashed his bread to the left, narrowly avoiding a blur of sand that was traveling at an intense speed and almost going through his head. Deidara cursed as the sand started chasing him around the sky again, following him no matter what he did, and the worst part was that the sand Gaara was using this time was at least 5 times faster. Deidara could only think of one thought to summarize everything. "What the fuck?" Deidara exclaimed as she barely avoided taking another blow from the sand. The blonde hurriedly threw more of his clay animals, which exploded whenever the sand came too near to them. Despite this, the sand was incooperative, zigzagging all around the clay animals. Deidara continued doing this for a few moments when all of a sudden more sand from below started to converge and form in the Ichibi's powerful hand. Deidara let out an unmanly yelp as he was forced to quickly avoid all of the sand. Made hands, which were the same hands that had been chasing him for the previous 15 minutes. This was just fucking great. Seriously, what the fuck was going on here? He had to deal with the insane sand that was chasing him, as well as the giant sand hands. The sand slowly wrapped around Deidara's arm and he slowly lifted his hand, his expression as blank as a brick. You would have a better chance of actually trying to read a brick's expression. However, all of Deidara's rapid movement and dodging failed to actually work. "Oh no, you're not," exclaimed the blonde Akatsuki member, before he constructed a sizable clay centipede and gave it instructions to wrap around the sand. "Oh fuck me sideways extra hard," Deidara thought in a slight panic as the sand slowly enveloped his arm and started to move to his shoulder. "The arts are exploding." Before the clay centipede exploded, Deidara gleefully exclaimed. The explosion stunned the sand, but it didn't force it to let go of his arm, so Deidara frowned lightly. Gaara sighed in irritation, then shrugged mentally, not caring that he was still going to take his opponent's arm. The young Kage slowly balled his fist, and Deidara gave a tiny yelp because the sand was getting in the way. "Coffin made of sand." Gaara clenched his fist tightly and said impassively. Deidara let out a low cry of excruciating pain as Gaara's sand consumed his entire left arm. Deidara was understandably upset about losing his arm, but at least the young Kazekage didn't take more than his arms. He didn't think he would be able to handle that, and now all he had to do was move that stupid sand into place. Below, however, dozens of Suna shinobi, including Baki, Yui, and Kankuro, were observing the fight and were all relieved that Gaara had taken the members of the Akatsuki's arm. Exactly as Kazekage Sama was supposed to. With a smile on his face, one Suna shinobi yelled while the other one applauded. Yui was staring at the fight with a shit-eating smile on her face. Yeah, Gaara kick his ass. The succubus with black hair bellowed. Gazing up at the perspiring Akatsuki member in the sky, Kankuro smiled slightly and said, "Tay, nobody gets out of Gaara's sand." "That member of Akatsuki is toast," he declared with assurance. Baki just squinted. He knew better than to underestimate his rivals. This fight was far from over. With only one arm remaining, Deidara wondered idly if he should have Sasori make him a new one, but he dismissed such thoughts as he stared at the stump that had once supported his left arm during the airborne battle. He was getting tired of this fight quickly. First, his infiltration didn't go as planned. Second, he was forced into a life or death battle with the Ichibi Jinchuriki. Third, his clay supply was rapidly running out. And, finally, he lost his left arm due to his grave miscalculation of his opponent's strength. Oh, and he wanted this battle to end as soon as possible. The blonde Akatsuki member started flying straight towards the floating Kazekage, trying to slap him out of the sky by swerving and dodging for each hand of sand, keeping that thought in mind. Deidara grinned maniacally as he approached the Kazekage and got ready to throw some clay animals in his hands. Just then, he was suddenly forced to avoid dozens of Kanai who were attempting to use Suna shinobi to throw him out of the sky. "Oh no way!" Deidara exclaimed. Deidara started to clench and unclench his fist, saying, "You know, I was really hoping they wouldn't get involved in this." Here, Deidara grinned gleefully and menacingly, but it's their fault for what's going to happen. Choose Kazekage. Sama. Preserve the village. Or carry on our fight, the blonde remarked sarcastically, opening his fist to let a tiny clay animal float in the middle. Between Gaara and Deidara, the animal floated to the center. And furthermore, "I'm tired of staring at your expressionless face," Deidara said in a menacing tone, before making a single hand gesture that caused the little animal to grow to enormous proportions. Nearly as big as the Ichibi. Deidara smirked as the massive clay animal started to descend to the helpless village below, and Gaara's eyes widened dramatically as he stared at it. Evacuation of as many villagers as possible is the goal of all Suna shinobi. I repeat, I want to get rid of as many villagers as I can. Baki roared. Panicked, the Suna shinobi obeyed his orders with ease. Yui clenched her fist, furious at the blonde Akatsuki member's cowardly move. OMG. Kankuro swore. With a single hand gesture, Deidara let out a sickening laugh of pure joy, declaring, "Art is an explosion." Katu. Deidara roared with delight, just before a tremendous explosion destroyed the sky and the earth below. A great shadow suddenly took over the sky, confusing many Suna shinobi into covering their eyes in terror and acceptance of their fate. The only thing that felt truly different, though, was when the smoke cleared and they saw something they had thought they would never see, a large shadow. The Suna shinobi only knew of one person who had this amazing control over sand, and their assumption was confirmed as they turned to see a panting and sweating Gaara. A massive amount of sand formed just at the moment of impact and placed itself as the shield to take most of the blunt damage and force of the explosion. Kazekage. Sama kept us safe. A shinobi exclaimed, and all of the shinobi stared at Gaara in shock and wonder. Didn't the Kazekage hate them for treating him badly when he was a kid? Why would he go to such lengths for them? In the meantime, Kankuro recalled the words Gaara had spoken to him just a few months prior, as well as their conversation. Like Naruto, I want to be strong. I now know why Naruto is so strong, and I no longer want to fight only for the sake of killing. Being vile and denying your humanity will give you extraordinary power. But the heart is where real strength originates. During my battle with Uzumaki Naruto, I discovered this. I discovered that by behaving like the monster people believe me to be, I was merely confirming their assumptions. As the Kazekage of this village. Since this village is my home, I will protect it. My household. And that's in my heart, where my actual strength is found. With a smile, the redhead said, I will protect this village in the hopes that it will love me back. Naruto, you really did make Gaara better, Kankuro thought to himself. Brightly smiling, Yui looked at Gaara and gave him a thumbs up when she noticed him looking in her direction. Gazing down at the unharmed village, Gaara allowed himself a small smile. "So you managed to save the village," Deidara said, grinning merrily as he fixed his gaze on the panting cage. "However, you're completely vulnerable." And when two clay birds flew straight into Gaara's face and then burst shortly after, shocking the Suna shinobi and Yui, his little smile was replaced with a look of pure shock and surprise. "Sama, case cage." Panicked, the Suna shinobi cried out. Gaara. Surprised and horrified, Yui, Kankuro, and Baki let out a shout. With hope and anticipation, everyone watched the smokescreen clear, and when it did, they saw in full view how the sand that had been chasing Deidara had now moved to protect Gaara, encasing her in a fully formed sphere. After scowling for a while, Deidara smirked menacingly and said, "I'm sorry, case cage." "Sama, but you've lost this battle." Deidara said in a tone that was matter of fact. As Gaara heard his opponent's statement, he scowled inside his defensive bubble. But, as soon as he realized his sand seemed to be drilled through, his frown turned into a shocked expression. Impossible, when could he have? His opponent interrupted him mid-sentence, causing Gaara to lose his train of thought. And his expression turned to horror as he saw what exactly was drilling through his sand: 7 large clay ants. "That was back when you had covered my arm with sand. Before you pulled back the sand, I had placed a few of my clay artworks inside of it back then." Gloated Deidara. "Jinchuriki, this is the end. The arts are exploding." Katu. The inside of Gaara's sand burst forth as soon as the blonde exclaimed with great joy, and the shinobi below could only watch in horror as their case cage started to rapidly descend from a height that would kill him, Jinchuriki or not. "Sama, case cage." The Sanagakure shinobi yelled in shock and bewilderment. "Gaara. Kun." Yui let out a cry of terror and panic, and then her wings started flapping wildly as she ventured into the sky to rescue her red-haired boyfriend. However, as she was about to arrive at the red-haired cage, a big clay bird struck her face and burst into pieces. She yelped in pain as she started to fall into the icy, hard ground below, but before she knew it, several clay grasshoppers had grabbed hold of her wings and burst, severely injuring them. Yui flew out of the smokescreen covered in smoke, and he coughed to get fresh air back into his lungs. But before she could hit the merciless ground with a splat, a wall of sand formed beneath her, wrapped protectively around her, and gently lowered her to the ground. Just in time to see the relief in Gaara's eyes, Yui was able to look into hers before the redhead closed his eyes and passed out. That was all the black-haired succubus could see before the blonde Akatsuki member and his large bird quickly caught the falling cage. Jinchuriki down by 1. 8 remaining. As he gazed at his prisoner, Deidara said smugly and darkly, The Suna shinobi could only watch helplessly as their case cage was abducted in front of their very eyes. Gaara. Screaming, Kankuro started to push through the throng of shinobi and chase after the fair-haired Akatsuki. "Wait, Kankuro." Baki yelled. It was too late, however, as the black-clad brother of Gaara had already began chasing the Akatsuki member and his bird. "Shit. Please send Black Hawk to Konoha and tell them we need assistance immediately." Baki cursed. "I want to secure the village with every available shinobi. Anbu follow Kankuro and help him immediately with retrieving the case cage." Baki let out a roar. "Yes, Baki. Sama." The shinobi nodded before departing to carry out their individual missions. While this was going on, Yui was limited to staring at the Akatsuki's bird's further receding figure while her eyes were watering. "Damn it!" she cried out, slamming her fist into the floor. Inside Naruto's seal in Konoha, the Kyuubi no Kitsune, a formidable and menacing presence, stirred slightly before his slitted eyes slowly opened to reveal crimson red. The Kyuubi sighed slightly, Shukaku. The Kitsune said, feeling his sibling through the empathy bond he and the other siblings had with one another. "So they have you now." All Biju had the empathy link. They could sense each other's presence, discern whether a fellow was undergoing reform, and, if they were near enough, communicate telepathically. Kyuubi was therefore confident that Shukaku's status was known to all of his siblings, just as he was. "So it appears that they have finally moved, huh?" Despite acting as though he hated his siblings as well, the truth was that Kyuubi didn't, Kyuubi said with a gruff clench on his human like hand. He could not stop the feeling of rage and hatred that crossed his being at the thought of his sibling being beaten, only to be in what the fuck the Akatsuki had planned for him. Since they were his siblings and his family, it was only natural for him to love them and hope that nothing bad would happen to any of them. Kyuubi was grateful that only Hachibi was able to see through his mask and that the eight-tailed octopus, which resembled an ox, never told their other siblings the truth. Naruto. Kyuubi whispered, "Wake up, Gaara needs you." He was awakened by a burst of chakra entering his container. As all of this was going on, Naruto's eyes snapped open outside of the seal, causing him to slowly get out of bed. He closed them, allowing Senjutsu chakra to enter his body and enhance his senses. He then used a small quantity of Kyuubi's chakra to extend his range even further and reached out to touch Gaara's chakra signature. The blonde felt Gaara's signature chakra, but it was steady and fluctuating, and he was leaving his village. Naruto clenched his fists, realizing that a fluctuating chakra indicated serious injury and that he was on the verge of a critical state. There was only one explanation for why he would be leaving his village and experiencing a fluctuating chakra at the same time. He growled low, "Akatsuki." His eyes softened as he looked down at Shiroi's sleeping form and gave her a quick kiss on the lips. Then he stood up and opened his closet, which revealed a variety of his robes. He quickly took out a pair of clean robes and put them on, but not before putting on a dark orange mesh shirt. Subsequently, the blonde put on his black pants and boots. He then crossed the room to his other closet, which he opened to show off a large collection of his weapons, including his crossbow, throwing knives, rope darts, hidden blades, and arrow quiver. Eventually, he moved to another area of the room, an altar, which had an exquisite and plush pillow that made it look as though you could fall asleep on it the moment you laid your head on it. But Naruto was much more interested in the sword on the altar, which had an eagle head for a pommel, eagle wings for a guard, and a handle covered in smooth, soft leather. For the time being, the blade was kept in its cozy black leather sheath, but that wouldn't last long. Naruto carefully lifted the blade and took out a small section of it. "Altair, are you prepared as well?" the fair-haired woman inquired. With a pulse, Altair nodded to his wielder. With a solemn, cold voice, Naruto said, "Good, but first we have to speak with the Hokage." He sheathed Altair as soon as the blade pulsed another agreement, silently opened the window, and turned back to face Shiroi in her sleeping form, debating whether or not to wake her before deciding to let her sleep a little longer. He made a clone silently and told it to prepare Shiroi's breakfast, since she would wake at precisely 7 o'clock. He looked up at the night sky, but there was only a pale tinge of light over the horizon, indicating that morning would arrive before Shiroi woke up. His destination, the Hokage Tower. He had to talk to Tsunade, and he had to tell her. He silently pulled his hood over his head, opened the window, and leapt out of his house. It's the red clouds moving in.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.